Morena.
Welcome everyone.
Morena.
Awesome to see you here on the 2nd of August 2023. And just like to welcome you all here, including councillors, admin, tai whenua, and all the whānau and listeners here today. So we're just going to start off with karakia, of course, and I'm just going to ask our Chief Baden, kia koe, could you provide us a karakia for our opening morning? Kia ora.
Ka poe. Tēnā koe, te hea mana, o tira tēnā tātou, te kōmiti Māori, o te kaunihira, arohe te mata o Māui, tēnā tātou, i tēnei ata. Tēnā tātou, i ngā tini aitu, ngā mate, kua pīkauri nei e tātou, te gana te kōrero matariki tā puapua, ko wā tātou nei tangiroe mata, e tā puapua nei, te papo te whenua, i ngā huhua, kua riro ki te pō, nō reira ko te pō kia rātou haere, o tātou tini whanaunga kua ngaro nei, haere atura. Ka hoki pēnei mai ki a tātou te ongora, huri no te tepu o tira koutou e mātakitaki mai ana i tēnei rā tēnā tātou katoa. Hoi anō, ko te wāhi kia hau, ko te wāhi ki te atua, nō re ki inoi tātou. He pātoa mātou nui te rangi, tēnei mātou te kōmiti Māori, o te kaunihira arohe, o te matawa Māui, mihi ati nei kia koe, i tēnei ata. Whakaaro nui atu tonu mātou ki a rātou kua wehe ki te pō. Me ngā whānau katoa, kua pākino nei te hurupari o Gabriel. Nō reira tiakina i a rātou katoa, nā whānau e noho whare kore ana, nā whānau e noho i raro i ngā kapua pauri o te wā. Hoi no, kia puki te ora ki a rātou o tira ki a tātou. Whakatō ki a maito o Wairu, hei arata ki a mātane mahi, wā mātane kōrero, me ngā tini kaupapa keimu i a tātou i tēnei rā. Nō reira tēnei ta mātane ino ki a koe te atua, māu e whakamana i rungi tunga tapu o iu Christ tō mata kai whakaora. Āmene.
Āmene. Nā koe, Baden. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we get going. Lunch is at 12 o'clock for half an hour, and we aim to have our meeting closed by 1:30. I'm going to be on the dot today because we've got lots of other mahi on today as well. So we're just going to look at a bit of housekeeping. As you can see, exits out there. Should there be a fire, any problem, wharipaku out that way, and if anything, follow Pieri out of here if we need to get out of here faster. So that's our housekeeping. I'd like to put it out to the tepu. Are there any apologies for today?
I think there was one from Mike Puck. He's going to be late.
That's correct.
Yep.
And we also heard that Hinawai and
Chief Executive running late.
yes, are going to be late.
And an apology from Councillor Foley.
And an apology from Councillor Foley.
And alternates, yes, Ana Te Whaiti.
Ana Te Whaiti.
And apologies for me. I've got a meeting with the Prime Minister's office about the cyclone recovery at 2, so I'm going to mostly take off just after 1 if we don't finish in time, because obviously important for our marae to...
Kei he taua hui, bro? Where's that hui? Is that just with mana huriri?
At Mōtio Marae? No.
With Mōtio. Ka poe. Rawe.
So I just want to... Yeah, so it's just a follow-up in regards to...
Good day, Hinawai.
Kia
ora koutou, paraha mai.
Kia ora.
We meet again.
You're more than welcome if you want to come along.
No. What about these fellas that... Petani?
Yeah, I'll ask the question when we get out there, but I just think because I've delayed it.
Tell them to say, just go down the road and talk with our whanaungas here that
They want to come over to Hawke, anyone's welcome. You want to come over? Up, you want to come over?
It's great to know that the minister's in town. Awesome.
Well, it's the staff, I think, so they report up.
Okay. So we have Councillor Foley, Ana Te Whaiti, Mike Paku coming in late. Got our other two members here. Are there any others? Okay. Is there someone here who'd like to move our apologies, please? Thank you, Peter. Second by?
Yep.
Matua Paura. All those in, what's the thing, in the way? All of those in favour of the apologies, please say aye.
Aye.
Those to the contrary? Oh, Carrie, thank you. Woo, this is my first tui, by the way.
Great job. Hey,
As your co-chair. Just own it, considering the Māori committee. I swear I have no German or any other that makes me be on the top. So we're going to mix my Gregorian time with a bit of Māori time. So we're just going to move to our second item, which is conflicts of interest. Who has not got one? I'll put it to the table. Any conflicts of interest, please come straight out with it. Also, I'd like to acknowledge our whānau that's on the Zoom. Beg your pardon?
Oh, pick it.
Tēnā rā koutou. Nau mai hara mai.
That's you, Di.
Kia ora, Di. Tēnā rā koutou. And to our staff that's over there in that corner over there, te rangi hau mā, tēnā rā koutou. Nau mai hara mai. Okay, we were talking about conflicts of interest.
Yeah, kia ora,
Okay,
kia ora. Just noted that a member of the Cyclone Gabriel Task Force, National Task Force, quote. Yeah. I know there's conflict, but just a declaration.
Thank you for that declaration. Anyone else would like to make any declarations?
It's not a declaration, but, obviously, I sit on in the turn in the governance committee with HBRC, but then, it's like us all, we're meeting with government
Yes.
in relation to cyclone and policy stuff. So, I just sort of bait and put that as a note as well.
Another note?
Not that it's I don't think it's conflict because that's all part of our marae business, but I'll declare it anyway.
Okay, and should any others come up, just please pass it on to our administrators here, please, by the end of the day. Okay, we're going to move on to item number 3. We're looking at alternate member appointments. Are all our members all here?
Roger.
You pardon?
Roger.
Roger's the only one.
Roger. Is there an alternate for Roger? Is that Di Smith?
I don't know whether, no, Di's here.
Yep. She looks like a good old kid.
Kia ora, but I'm not the alternate.
Margaret.
Not the alternate?
So anyway, kei te koe.
Oh, haere tonu. Okay, well, we're going to move on to item number 4 then. Confirmation of the minutes of the last Māori committee dated the 3rd of May 2023. But plenty of time to have a look at our minutes.
I'll be honest, I haven't had a chance because I didn't have access to Stella, and then the board pack hasn't got the previous minutes in it.
Never sent it, yeah.
Yeah, so I suppose in future, just good to have the minutes in the board pack, and then if we're working off the hard copy, then we can just get through the minutes. Well, I'm just saying for my circumstance.
Point taken, so I'll give you a couple of minutes there, Māori.
Oh, look, I mean, there was a huge discussion based on that short time frame, as you may recall.
Yes.
And you took quite a bit of that space, so actually.
Oh, to me?
But I just wanted to move it. I've gone through it.
Okay, do I have a seconder for the minutes, please?
Happy to second.
Thank you, Henawai. So that's Māori and Henawai. All of those in Henawai. In favour, please say aye.
Aye.
And all those to the contrary?
The only point, sorry, I'll bring up to Marty's comment is,
Harry?
I took a huge bit of time, but I see the RPC has taken a huge bit of time as well to confirm their members.
Double aye.
Ngā mihi.
Quick, Mike's arrived.
Put on a mic. Don't see you just breezing. Well, we're up to item number 5. We've just had a confirmation of minutes from Māori and Henawai, all carried. And so the follow-up to the previous Māori committee meeting, number 5. Let's have a look at those items. So this was raised at the previous meeting to follow up on any discussion around this item, Cyclone Gabriel response, recovery and reviews, workshop date to be scheduled. Dawley, Munro. Committee workshop to inform members about flood and drainage schemes, including how they work and are funded, prior to commencement of the HBRC independent review.
Chair, in the absence of our General Manager Assets, Chris Dolly,
I'm unable to provide a date as to where that's at in terms of a workshop, other than to comment that Chris and his team have been under the gun over the last wee while, and that continues on. So if you leave that with me, I'll follow up with Chris.
So is there action point in regards to the work?
You need to follow up.
Workshop date to be scheduled.
Yeah, because and I suppose I stated it earlier, we're having a heap of conversations, and I suppose to keep us in line with the kōrero that's happening in this hui, it's good if we're aligned, because then we'll be sending different messages to
Be
government in relation to the response and how our marae are working. So that workshop's most probably quite important for the regional council if you want to manage a plan going forward with mana whenua, because we're having a heap of, as I said, I'm having a conversation this afternoon, and my conversation might be totally different to what the regional council's having. I'm just saying, because that's what's happening. Same for Petane, Tongoia. We're dealing direct government in regards to response and in recovery. So I just need to make it as a valid, because a valid point when councils are going through their process. If it's a workshop to engage in and inform people. Yep.
So through you, Chair, so the workshop was about flood and drainage schemes, including how they work and are funded.
Yes.
To some extent, that's also tied up in the negotiations that are still active even this week, pending announcements.
Yep.
So that's what the focus was on, and prior to the HPRC independent review.
Yep. So that flood planning, what I suppose the point I'm getting at there around Stop Bank, and you look at Waiheke and then plugging the gap up there, that's a vital stage to protect the whare and the marae and all that in that area. So we're talking about rebuilding the Stop Bank, and I'm not right up to play, but I'm just saying all those conversations are most probably important in our conversations as a point.
Madam Chair, can I make a suggestion that for practical reasons, possibly at the next Māori committee, that there be a workshop time associated? I mean, that's up to you two as chairs, but it seems like some information in a workshop setting is being requested. And like with council, we try and have workshops and councils on the same day, so that might be really useful, just to have everyone around the table get an update on where we are post negotiations will be at the end of this week, and what some of those projects involve.
Yep.
So that's just a suggestion on how to deal with the request.
Okay, thank you, Hinawai. And Peter, I hear you about realigning with the particular dates you're talking about, flood drainage scheme. So Piri to follow up with Chris Dolly. Pretty much all we can do.
Yeah, and those announcements have been made this week, as has been said. So it's important as a committee that we're fully informed, obviously, the impacts that's going to occur. So very vital as a management team that represents our tai whenua, that we're fully engaged in the process. So because I just feel some things I'm not aware of, and it's just you got to be informed to make decisions, and if you're not informed, it makes you vulnerable. Yep,
Okay, so that leads to these workshops.
Yep.
Kei te pai, kia ora. Okay, we're going to move on to item number 6, which is a call for minor items on the agenda. Okay, calling for minor items.
I know we discussed it as an informal meeting prior to this meeting, and then we can potentially cover off some of those points as we go, because there's reports being brought, and maybe those minor items can be deferred to one, the remuneration, and there's one on coastal hazards. Polder, that you wanted to talk to, and potentially you'll bring it up in your report, but we can cover that off in the hazard corridor as well.
So instead of creating a new minor item, we're just going to tag them on to the other ones that are already here?
Yep.
Okay, well, kei te pai, any others?
Well, just kia ora.
Kia ora, Baden.
And just probably picking up on what Peter's saying is that there's some big take going on at the moment that has impacts for a lot of us around the room. Coming from regional council and other councils, so there needs to be a space for us to kōrero on those, because it would be a momo if we weren't able to have that kōrero here and get some updates on what's going on. We've got a couple of marae here that are the worst affected in the Here Taungahuriri area, so rather than hearing it and seeing it in the press, we should be able to talk about it face to face right here, right now.
Exactly.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
We have an issue on our stop bank, moko tuera ki rangatira. I'd like to address that later.
Got that for minor items?
Yes.
How can I title this for you?
Sorry?
Can you just, stop bank,
Yeah.
thank you, stop bank, uppy. Okay,
Yes, Madam Chair.
Yes,
Oh,
Marty.
just a quick comment,
Kia ora.
because I noticed that in the item 10 statutory advocate update,
Yes.
there's a huge amount of kōrero that's going to be relevant to quite a bit of the discussion, I think, that's been raised this morning. So just noting the fact that that's got quite a large content.
statutory advocacy update, item 10, okay? Thank you, Marty, point taken. That's minor items, uppy Robin and,
Oh, kia ora. Kia ora, can you hear me?
oh, yes, tēnā koe tai.
Kia ora, Madam Chair. I do have a question, and I'm not familiar with the minor items agenda, but this is in relation to the science charges with the Water Holdings Hawke's Bay,
Science charges.
and our position is the tai whenua in Tamatea. Yeah, I just wanted to know the position of where, is this an item that I can put on the agenda, or is this something that I have to talk with regional council?
Is it minor item? Yes, it is.
Okay, could I place that on the agenda, please? Thank
Okay,
you.
ki te pai, I've got you, Di here, science changes, science charges, beg your pardon.
And Madam Chair, just one other point too, and I don't think it's covered in the statutory part, but obviously Three Waters legislation and that's all going through. And then I know there's been submissions in regards to Three Waters in there. So whether in the future there's maybe whether we talk about workshops in that, and I don't think we wouldn't have the time today to cover off that, but that's a big kōrero that because I know I've been having conversations in regards to the changes and that and a submission that's been put forward. So, yeah, obviously that's important, most probably for us to have a kōrero at some time as a committee.
So let's put it onto the agenda, Pete, as a minor item, and then we can, that helps us settle the work.
So how about I just put it on the agenda as future workshops, is that to come up with there yet?
Yep.
So that's for you. Okay, we've got 4 minor items. And you're going to leave that one there, Peter. Okay, so we've got coastal hazards, we've got stop banks, we've got science charges, future workshops, and some statutory stuff. Okay,
Chair, so coastal hazards is an agenda item anyway.
yes?
Is it also a minor item?
No, we're going to tag on, right? We're going to tag on this,
I think the thing around coastal hazard strategy, we had a conversation this morning, there's a lot of, with the silt deposits out at Pānia, we've got a Maiki Paratū who come out for our customary kaitiaki. We've had Niwa up here doing research and all that, and I think the kōrero was mostly bigger than that presentation that's going to happen this afternoon. We talked about having a workshop in regards to that, because there's a lot of impacts on the, when we talk about coastal hazard strategy, then we talk about the impacts, and now there's onus on regional councils after that court case coming up in Tauranga around protecting the reef and moana and that, so they've got a bigger I suppose, responsibility in regards to that case. And so when we're talking about coastal hazard strategy, I think we need to have a bigger conversation. I chair Te Mata Māori, co-chair with Jenny Major, and then obviously we're having conversations in that fishery space, and then with government, and then I suppose where does the regional council fit in with that recent court case they went through, and then put some onus on council to deliver on some of the management. So that's a big conversation in relation to that, maybe that 20-30 minute slot that it's going to get this afternoon. I think, and then Polder's got some issues some concerns he wants to discuss down Prongaho. So,
Thank you very much.
Just to put a brief around it.
That's our minor items for, and right, we're going to move to, because we're like 4 minutes late now. We're on to item 7. We're going to move to the Māori Committee Appointees Remuneration Review, and we've got 20 minutes, so we're going to knock it down to 15. Let's go. Who wants to lead that discussion?
We've got someone going to present the paper, or is that not being done?
The paper is actually in the pack.
Yep, I've read the pack, so you just wanted to comment back on, I think Baden might have made some comments.
So Mike, perhaps between you and I, because at the council meeting the other day, There was a call for it to come back to the Māori committee
It's
for
correct,
broader
yep.
discussion.
That's correct.
And so hence the paper that's on there at the moment. So it's been held over from Regional Council until the end of the month.
Kia ora, through you, Madam Chair. Where this landed at our council table 2 weeks ago was that we were brought recommendations based on independent review done by Strategic Pay. And we took advice from Mike and Katarina in that meeting to make sure it comes to this committee before it comes to Hawke's Bay Regional Council for decision. So that's why this paper is here. And it is up to you, Madam Chair, how you'd like any feedback that goes into it before it then comes to the council for final decision.
Just adding to that, Madam Chair, it was, as part of that overall discussion, the RPC was part of that conversation. And it was also going to go back up to their committee to discuss prior to the decision being made by the full council. Could I recommend that we pass the conversation over to our officers to lead, as it is their paper?
Absolutely, I'll take your call. I'd like to hand it over to you, Judy.
Well, the paper is as it reads.
Yes.
And I'm just wondering if there's any particular questions, notwithstanding that at the council meeting we had Kath Hendry from Strategic Pay, who was an advisor on the paper content of the process that they went through. She isn't actually on today. So if there's any questions that I cannot answer, then I'm happy to go to Strategic Pay to get a response to those. So happy to take any questions, Chair.
Yeah,
Questions here, Babe?
comment.
Perhaps some background before we go to the
Background, please.
questions,
Some background to the Strategic Pay Corridor?
about how we got there.
Okay.
So I don't think it's really covered in there.
Okay.
So if we remember, this conversation's been on our table since the end of, coming towards the end of the last triennial elections. It came on to our table. It was agreed between both committees that Strategic Pay would be the independent body that would be used. Interviews took place, a workshop took place with the Māori Standing Committee. Interviews took place with both co-chairs and of course the two chair and deputy chair of the RPC. It is the first time Strategic Pay have done the Māori Standing Committee. In the past, we've used someone different from the rest of the council. All of the council is done by Strategic Pay, and at our workshop we decided to pull everybody in underneath the same framework. So that's a bit of a background of how Strategic Pay came into the middle of this. It's internationally recognised organisation and are used worldwide, let alone nationwide. Back to you, Madam Chair.
So, discussion around the table? Baden?
Yeah, kia ora. And I did give this feedback through the chain, but I wasn't happy with Strategic Pay's recommendation to actually drop the fee. I think that sends the wrong message to the whānau that make their time available to come and give, and to me it's about the value of what we bring to the table. And there's only one way that goes, and that's up. So the value of what Māori bring to the table should be increased rather than decreased. And when I saw that decrease, I was like, kei te he tēnā. Yeah, kei te he tēnā. And so that's my feedback, that you leave it as it is or that you put it up. But to reduce it sends a message to me, and I don't know about other people, that our contribution is less valuable than it was this time, well, last year or whatever, whenever that rate was set. So that would be my first bit of feedback to Strategic Pay and to the Regional Council, is that actually the value of what Māori bring to the table needs to be increased, not decreased. So the 452 reduced to 435. Kei te he tēnā. Hey, yeah.
In the Māori budget, there was a surplus, I believe.
No. I think in this day and age, with everything that's coming down the pipeline, with everything that councils need mana whenua, tangata whenua support and advice on, sends the wrong message.
Jerry?
Through you, Chair.
Tēnā koe.
Not at all to defend strategic pay, but they did acknowledge the submission that you put in. And so you would sort of see in this document here that's attached, the strategic pay assessment, that they've actually recommended the 452.
Kia ora, I saw that. I just needed to say. Yeah.
Any other comments and discussion to be had?
Just a tautoko Baden's corridor as well, because we're all got a number of challenges and we're picking and choosing which committees we go on now because everyone's wanting a piece here. And then, so to add value, obviously you've got to be remunerated for the work. And it's not all about the money, because a lot of us sit on these boards and committees for nothing and we just do the mahi because we want to see improvement in that Māori space. So, yeah, just support tautoko Baden's corridor. And a point that was brought up in this morning in regards to and we said we'd bring it up not as a minor item but in the remuneration, because there was concerns raised in regards to, because previously our members would provide resourcing, and we know there's oversupply, the budget's underspent within that Māori area, but it becomes concerning when our members ain't provided the necessary tools in the kit, and members were advised that they were asked to hand back their iPads, and we're working from a stellar system. And the point is about resourcing the members within the committee to have the resourcing to do the mahi, because everyone's got a board pack, hard copy, today, or a lot of everyone asks for a hard copy, but if you ain't got the tool to get into Stellar, then you can't pull it up on things. So I just bring that as a point because it's a concern to me when you can't. I know my computer got stolen the other year and they said, it's like getting replaced due to budget constraints, but that's an issue when now the members here have handed their tools of the trade into the back and haven't been replaced. So I just sort of bring that up in remuneration.
Fair point. Can we get a response from that? Apparently, yes, all our members have had to hand all their equipment in, and so there's been a delay in refurbishing them. So can you have a response?
Well, not so much a response, I'll follow up, because I do agree you should have the equipment to be able to do the mahi. So I'll follow up and see why they weren't reissued.
This is something that we spoke about this morning around resourcing, besides just the remuneration of the people, but also the resourcing of this committee to be able to workshop, to be able to wānanga, to be able to then engage back in our communities. We can't just leave the laptop here and then go back to our communities. It's actually with us for the whole term. That was kind of loud and clear this morning from our members. Any other comments, whānau?
Well, te ahua ohorere au, ki te whakarongo ki e rā kōrero nā te mea. Normally, as part of any committee that you're with local authority, that they will give you the tools, including whatever the tool needed to access the papers. But I came in earlier and some of the other committee members that have been a part of this committee for a while said that they had to hand in their computers, and that was a change of policy. They weren't just handed in to get refurbed or anything, that they were handed in wake tonu atu. So, I think that needs to be followed up on, because it doesn't sound right.
With urgency as well.
Yeah. I mean, Stella, what's Stella? I mean, I need to read the papers, but I don't have access to Stella. I don't know if anyone else does, but, if you want us to access them, well, we need to be able to do that.
Chair, also, one of the issues with that Stella program that we were allocated on our iPads.
Yes.
Last term, I wanted to download the software so that I can, work on it.
Yes.
And then I was told that that was going to be at my cost.
Oh.
What do you mean by download the software, Hawke?
Well, okay, I couldn't actually access and print on it. I needed a program. And if I was going to download it, it was at my cost.
So you wanted the ability to print?
Yes, exactly. So what
I
was
guess
it all about? I wasn't too, that just doesn't ring true. If you want me to be performing on this committee, well, I need to have access, and why should it be at my cost?
Through you, Chair, if our committee are happy to leave that one with me, I'll follow up on it. I know the recall was actually, we recalled at the end of a triennium, and then reissue. Well, I'm not sure if that was the case. I'll clarify that, and I'll also follow up, because actually none of us who have Stella, me included, have the ability to print. It's just one of those things with Stella, but I'll follow up. Kia ora, Chair.
And also with Stella, just because I'm having the same issue, is just contact our administrators, either Leanne Hooper or our brilliant Alison here, that will help you link up, okay? You just have to email to request the link, okay, to Stella. They can come and see me. Okay, kapai. So, you know where to come to get contact to Stella, okay, and connection.
Recommendation.
Around the recommendation for the remuneration.
So if I take on board what you've said, Baden, so there's general respect for the report from Stella, but we certainly are not happy to see a reduction in regards to the sitting fees for our members. We do note the recommendation or the comment in there in regards to that the sitting fees that should at least remain static. Right? And-
Static will go up.
or-
Yeah, you know, the review, any review, I should be seeing it going that way, you know, not going,
So,
but, you know,
but at least at this stage, for this first one,
And I
it's going to remain
suppose,
static.
and I suppose just a question, sorry, a comment you had to Baden's kōrero, when you break that down on an hourly rate and then you factor in the mātauranga Māori and the knowledge our whānau bring in regards to that, you know, doesn't align with modern charge out rates when you talk about in the legal fraternity or accountancy and that in mātauranga Māori, and we've got to make sure our knowledge that we bring in the thing. So I'm just saying, when you look at the formulas that these committees work on, do they base that in regards to when they come out with figure? I'm just putting that out there because I don't know if that within the
Framework.
formula and framework that they've actually come up with a active formula that can cost out mātauranga Māori. I don't know. I'm just saying. It's just a question I'd.
and I think that council's got to give some advice to these fellows because, you know, they've got these bland kind of frameworks that they use. You know, they normally do payroll for that, but when it comes to this kind of kōrero, they often come up short, and they've come up short this time too. So that, you know, that would be my feedback to them, is that they actually need to understand what it is we bring to the table. It's different than their.
Chair.
Oh.
Just going to say.
So just to reflect back, so in the appendice that's attached to the paper, it indicates the process that they've gone through. Also, in the process of consultation from the very outset, this committee has been engaged in terms of providing feedback to strategic pay on what should be evaluated. So there has been every opportunity leading up to this point for that feedback, including Mātauranga Māori, to be incorporated as part of that review.
Yeah, and I did feedback, but it's not recognised in the figure when you base it on mainstream other sciences and other professional I suppose, qualifications and that people are based on a base rate. When you equate that into mātauranga Māori, it just doesn't appear, it's a bit like, that's all I'm saying,
So just in regards
even
to,
though we had the conversation.
just in regards to governance, governance is always undervalued when it comes to the remuneration. And it doesn't matter whether it's Mātauranga Māori or just Mātauranga, whether it's chairs, whether it's committee members, because this is not a paid employment. You're not contracted in. You sit here because you represent someone at a governance level. And it's recognised worldwide. Governance is undervalued, full stop.
So if I just come back to the recommendations, they're incorporated in the paper at 8.1, 8.2, which does indicate 452 per meeting.
So are we there?
Can I just make, Madam Chair,
Sure, Paula.
a little example? I see myself as a Māori scientist. If you want to assign your scientist and put him in that chair and set him for the same period, for the same time, for the same day, and said, which way do you want to choose, Paul? I'd take his way. Hey?
Yes,
Mike?
yeah, there was, yeah, look, understand all that, but we're here as governance, and that's the real guts
It's
of
the
it.
key thing.
Yeah, we're here as governance, not as contractors, not as scientists, not as mātauranga Māori. We're here as governance. Same as Heniwai is there as a governor when she sits in the chair. We're governance. And the rates are put right across nationally.
Yes.
Not just this organisation, but the average is taken out nationally.
And I
That's
think,
where they reach, that's how they reach the figures that they reach.
and I think we just got to be clear, because as governors, we need to send clear messages. And that's what we're saying. Yeah, we might not change the process, but we need to be clear in our definition. And yep, I agree with you, governors are undervalued, but it's no point in us, saying, hey, we support that, and we just roll over and say, yes, we're saying no. We recognise that, Māori bring a lot of value within the framework and then the formulas that are designed to do those fees. People need to know what they're talking about. And I know we discussed and we brought a lot of those points, but I'm just saying we need to send clear messaging, because then it'll help other whānau that are going through the same situation. Moving forward.
So we go back to what Baden's comments were, is that perhaps strategic pay and like-minded institutions need to pay more focus in regards to Tāo Māori and the extra value that Māori have to bring to the table in the governance sector. Perhaps we feel it's not been fully recognised within their current framework.
Yep.
We happy with that?
Yeah, I think the State Services Commission as a benchmark is probably we're always going to get undercut using that benchmark. And I think there's an opportunity to be a bit more innovative on how we do this, because I know Hastings District Council, they did a review of what they were paying their committees, especially the Māori Standing Committee over there. And I think they were able to come up with something a little bit more outside the box. And so that would be, feedback for the next review, whenever that is that, there's opportunities to be a bit more.
So it's slightly lower than this one.
Is it? Oh, okay. Check that one out as well.
That was a quick reverse.
Not by much though, only about $50.
Yeah, but you get the message. The message is clear that we feel our mātauranga is not appreciated as it should be under these types of remuneration reviews.
Chair, can I just make one last comment?
Sure, Petey.
So when you go to those that are in existence, you'll probably find that they don't appreciate nor understand Mātauranga Māori and all of the other attributes that you've been talking about. It's possibly something for the future for this committee. So you wouldn't leave it to those organisations to define what this is, but it's possibly a piece of work that could be well defined from this committee as to what it is, and a contribution that could be made to future.
Tēnā pai o whakaaro. That's a really good thing, another workshop for us to have, whānau. Okay, we're coming back to this recommendation.
So I'm happy for us to accept the recommendations to ensure that the status quo remains in regards to the sitting fees for the committee members of the Māori Standing Committee. We also want to capture our feedback, the feedback from Baden, back to strategic pay.
Yes, please.
As to our feelings in regards to how they capture Mātauranga Māori and the recognition for Māori governance, that this is over and above normal governance. The other part, I think, is what Petty added to that. Perhaps we could, as part of our workshop, actually define what those values are to feed back up to strategic pay. And hopefully change it to national.
Yeah, that's a national issue.
That's actually a good chunk of work. Very great, very good. Okay, so.
Happy to move that.
So we've got a mover. So do we have a seconder?
Oh, Madam Chair. I second.
Thank you. Thank you, Henare. We've got Mike moving. We have a seconder, Henare Meta. All of those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those to the contrary say so. Okay, to buy. Carried. The ayes have it.
Just in that the what do we call it, the IT things? Is that part of this recommendation, or is this just a follow-up
That's something
action?
Pierre's going to follow up on all the IT and the updates around the support wraparound. Okay, I've drawn all over my run sheet. We're up to the next item, item 8, Land for Life Project Update.
We have Michael Bassett-Foss.
We have Michael Bassett. Tēnā koe, Michael. Nau mai, hara mai. Welcome to the Te Pū. You've got 30 minutes.
30 minutes.
I think that includes question time too.
That includes questions, that's correct.
Kia ora tātou.
Kia ora.
Tēnā koe.
Ko mātatua te waka ko whakatoria te iwi I whanau mai au ki Fiji. I tīpuna tōku whanau ki Matawa Maui no Ahariri a Mato. Ko Matarua Hou Timonga ko Moana Nui a Kiwa Ta'awa. So I'm project lead for the Land for Life project, called Michael Bassett-Foss tōku ingoa. Just want to note right up front that there is another partner here in the Nature Conservancy, as partnered with the Regional Council. The Nature Conservancy is a global conservation organisation, some 4,000 staff around the world, including staff based in New Zealand. They bring expertise to the project around bringing large-scale financing to solve environmental problems at scale. They've got street cred in global financing markets, so they're walking alongside the project, and also MPI have supported the business case, which I'll talk to you about shortly. I've got a few slides here. I'm going to rattle quite quickly and skip a few, but I've got about 6, and then look forward to kōrero. So this started out of the concerns that the major stressor on our waterways in Hawke's Bay is sediment, and we know that planting trees on vulnerable land, is a good way to reduce erosion. The challenge that was understood is that the cost to do that at the scale needed to make the improvements that were wanted, both for climate change and for erosion, was sort of estimated to be in the order of hundreds of millions of dollars. So it's outside the scope of this council. So, the project sort of was to look at the potential to plant at scale, the potential for preparation for climate change, but to stimulate the market to be able to support this investment and improve the environment as well. I just want to note that trees are planted on private land, so central to this is the landowner, and central to planting the trees is to have a plan. So the farm plan is sort of a fundamental component, and it needs to express the aspiration of the landowner about the types of trees they want planted, with expert knowledge around the right tree in the right place, which was the former name for this project, to give the landowner the confidence to progress on the journey, to improve land use, and also give confidence to financiers to support the landowner. So we presented to a committee workshop a couple of weeks ago and was invited to come and present here, provide you with an update. So kia ora for that. There was a farmer survey undertaken last year. 75% of landowners were interested or very interested, to have further discussions about being involved in the project. The key challenges for them just doing this anyway was lack of knowledge and lack of resources, i.e. money. So, the farm plan provides the knowledge and the resources around potential financing mechanisms to make this happen. We've developed a farm plan on 12 pilot farms, identified that there are significant benefits around, up to 25% reduction in erosion off that farmland. If we scaled this, potential to sequester 15 million tonnes of carbon over 30 years, and reasonable areas of vulnerable land, put in trees. Also done a lot of market testing with potential financing organisations and other implementation partners, and believe that the obstacles to develop a model are able to be solved. Cyclone Gabriel changed things for a lot of parties in many ways, and one was the view on this project. So the business case, which I'll talk about shortly, describes the opportunity to scale this up to 600 farms over 3 years, and be a cornerstone for regional recovery, so that we can keep soils on our vulnerable land and out of the water. It certainly requires, some streamlining of the farm planning process, and, the regional council will maintain its role to try and, as that contact point with landowners, and to be a catalyst for this farm planning process, much like the erosion control scheme at the moment, and that's envisaged. So the business case looks at the options to scale, the justification, the financing models, proposed approach, supply chain constraints, which are very real, costs and risks. So this is the timeline. We're in the middle there, that middle drop-down arrow. The business case was presented in draft to government at the end of June. It's been reviewed over the last 3 weeks by about 25 different people. It's being finalised at the moment, so hopefully within the next week or so we'll have a final business case. And then we go into a process of about 3 months with the partners to decide whether we go or not. So looking for a go, no-go decision for business case approval in October. And then we actually build the model more properly and engage with the right parties and work out how we implement this. Okay, skipping some slides. Happy to go through detail as you like it, but just in terms of, what does this thing look like? This hasn't been put in place. This is what's envisaged to be built over, after the decision to go. There's a project team that does the engagement and the communications and sort of coordinates things. The technical assistance, the TA facility, technical assistance facility, is where the farm plan gets built, extension services out to landowners, some research that's required. We need to improve the costs around native planting and other things, but also the measurement and reporting framework that needs to be put around this to ensure we're getting the outcomes that we all want. The implementation entities are the forestry companies, the nurseries that need to scale up and actually, plant all of these trees and make the land use considerations. There's parties out there that we've spoken to. And then the financing entity itself that can bring money to the table from various sources, including banks, maybe some government grants in there to help reduce the cost of capital required, maybe some overseas philanthropic investment also to reduce the capital cost. We've considered various roles for various parties, and so just sort of winding it up and inviting a good discussion. Just to reiterate, the landowner's central to this. We've tested it on pilot farms that's been used to scale up and provide information for the business case. It has the potential to be the cornerstone for recovery. We're going through a decision-making process at the moment, and I presented to a committee workshop a couple of weeks ago, and as I mentioned, invited to come back here, and through a prior workshop with TPK and the Māori, your team, Peri, identified significant opportunity to engage with the committee around engaging with Māori for the benefit of whenua Māori moving forward, but also potential for capability development for landowners and other businesses that might be supporting the scale up of this around the supply chain as well. So just with that huge potential we can see, just look forward to getting feedback, starting the discussion, and when we're ready to build this model, getting a lot more input. Yeah. So, Chair, I just welcome questions.
Whānau for Baden.
Kia ora. Yeah, I was just going to ask about whenua Māori and, looking on the map and, looking at the pilot farms, first question came up in my mind was, do you have any Māori, whenua Māori farms as part of the pilot? That's the first question. The other question is, some of our whenua Māori blocks are full of native bush. That could be, that could be managed to fit, some of the criteria that government's looking for to sequester carbon, et cetera, and I was just wondering, what's the thinking, my mind, it shouldn't be just farms that you're wanting to plant. What about the whenua blocks that already have trees there that just aren't managed, and so they're not acknowledged in the ETS or, in kind of schemes, and they don't get funding?
Yeah. So, through you, Chair, the two of the 12 pilot farms are on whenua Māori. One's owned by a trust, one's owned by individual landowners. And it was a criteria that was set around ensuring there was some Māori landowners through the selection of those pilot farms. And there's been other engagement in and around at the farm scale for potential. In relation to your second point, yeah, we see potential as well. With signals, there's a couple of constraints around this. One is the cost of native planting and native sort of reforestation, carbon prices and its volatility, which comes back to the emissions trading scheme, and getting some stability around the carbon prices through confidence in the ETS and how it's applied. So there's strong signals in the business case back to government to support the outcomes that you talk about and that the project needs as well. Yeah.
Yeah, because we our farms, and often we're not farmers as such, but we're landowners. Big tracts of land, whenua, and that whenua can be better utilised, whether it be natives or whatever. It can be a mix. It can be a mix of farming, natives, even a bit of pine in there, whatever. But there's opportunities for our people and projects like this. And so from this committee's point of view, we want to make sure that our people are part of the solution, so to speak. We, Waimarama, I just texted our project manager to say, hey, are we over this? But we're looking at a Waingongoro River restoration project that includes big farms, Māori land blocks, marae, two marae actually, and private owners in the whole thing. So, it's about coming together, and Sophie's over it. But collaborations of communities to do this type of thing, that's where I see it, rather than just individual farms. Farms, you've got to touch community. There's got to be a touch Māori community, Pākehā community. We all need to be part of that solution. So, yeah, are you looking at that type of collaboration? Because if it's just farms, well, we know farms are there to make money, and then they can add value to their farms to the time they're going to sell it. For us, our whenua, hei te pupuri tonu, wāke tonu atu, we'll hold that whenua forever. So there needs to be some longevity in this kōrero. And if you want longevity, come and talk to our people.
Kia ora, and you articulated that way better than I could have, but that's the way I see the world too, and I see huge potential to work with Hapori and Marae, who own the large tracts of land that you described, because if we're going to scale to solve the problem for the region that we've got, then we need to deal with catchments, sub-catchments, and communities that have land that can actually scale quite quickly. And I went to the launch of the Mahu Marae recovery plan, and one of the PO is land use, reconsideration. So there's just another example like yours to have these conversations as we actually build this model and scale.
Kia ora.
Kia ora.
Just to follow on from
Dr.
Baden and just to me, to you as well, Michael. Thanks for the report. And there is a bit of a trend as a result of impact coming through where leased land, so whenua Māori, are not sustainable by those that have got that at the moment. And of course, not only is there an aspiration to return by Māori back to their own lands, there's a freeing up of that particular leased land Māori, which has been part of bigger blocks held by non-Māori, that this would create a further benefit, specifically targeting whenua Māori. But I just wanted to get a little bit of clarity. I imagine that this Land for Life and the farm plans in some way links into FEMP, the Farm Environmental Management Plans, which of course it brings a huge cost back down to individual farmers and having to, and it's been a real challenge for farms overall in terms of the outlay that it will cost, and I've been branded some numbers in there. So this farm plan approach, apart from there's free support and the offering to farm landowners, up to the point, of course, where you've identified in the plan itself for the farm, there's the requirement for purchase of trees, natives, etc., and then that becomes a cost factor, of which you've alluded to in there. So that FEMP to a farm plan.
Yeah, really good point. Just in relation to, whenua Māori, leased land and so forth, we had a really good kōrero with TPK just around these very challenges, and just leveraging their resources as we go out and engage, with marae and wider, we need to be aligned around this very discussion. So, in relation to, what was the second point? FEMP, thank you, yeah. So, FEMPs will be replaced largely, as I understand it, by the freshwater farm plan process, which is being rolled out by MFE, and I think now it's been delayed back to 2025 for Hawke's Bay. The farm plans for the Land for Life project will actually tick all of the boxes for the freshwater farm plan as well. So not only will it deliver or provide knowledge and support for the vision for the landowner, but it'll also deal with the compliance elements at the same time. And the business case, while it doesn't solve the problem, it's assessing through the implementation the option for a cost-sharing model around the development of the farm plan with landowners and with others.
I guess my point was that, I know that I'm aware of that farmers are struggling, particularly with that cost burden to do that. But interesting to hear that there's an evolving process. Yeah, kia ora, thanks for that.
One more minute. Oh, yes, Charlie, then followed by Peter, and then we're going to round off. Thank you.
Kia ora. Just quickly, in your discussions with TPK, is that just with your management team, or do you have any Māori in there?
It was with the Māori Partnerships team.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, the point I'm getting at is, like, if you look at land at Pāhuera,
Yeah.
we sort of cover the Mohawk Valley,
Yeah.
but the land's not big enough to be classified as a farm. But 100 years ago, it's what was left for them to make a living out of. So, yeah, what you've done is sort of wiped our valley out. It's not a viable option, and it's the only option we have. So, yeah, you need to sort of rethink how they can get into the system rather than be locked out.
Yeah, no, good advice.
Yeah.
Kia ora.
Give us a yell, I'll give you a hand.
And followed by
Madam Chair, kia ora.
Thank you.
Michael, we too have around Kōpatiki, we have small tracts of land and a long Fundin road there. And so, we're ready to go, and we would love to have, plant natives and whatever, and this will certainly mitigate some of the erosion issues around our river. Kia ora.
Thank you, Api. I'm going to finish. Marty, did you want to finish off?
Oh, I
No,
think I
was
have
it you? Or
one
speak?
question, I think.
Okay.
I just had a question in regards to, because there's some case history with regional council in that Land for Life. Then obviously, and we can relate that back to the upper Mohaka, and then, you know, all that work that was done on up the top with the nitrogen and that, and then I suppose within this report, it doesn't reflect that previous work that the regional union, it might be before your time was done back in that period with all that nitrogen release in the upper Mohaka. And then the engagement with those Māori whenua trusts that set up there, because siltation, most of the land, if you look at the Ngararoro, you look at the Tutaikiri, you look at the Mohaka, obviously there's a lot of large tracts of Māori whenua up in the upper catchment. So you know, when you're doing a plan, the plan has to incorporate those blocks, because I know the regional council, I don't know, 10 years ago supported a planting project in Repia after a big fire and wiped out that, and then they supported those projects. So in the engagement process, that needs to be taken into account, because if you're not fixing up the top end, you know, what does it do to the bottom end? So I suppose when we talk about that strategy and that project moving forward, because I don't know if those trusts have been engaged, and they were engaged about 6 or 7 years ago, and there's a collective of Māori organisations there, and I think they've fed into the other that are Bonnie and that, the work that they're doing in regards to the Mohaka catchment of Pahuwera and that. So it's quite important that I suppose they come into that picture, and I think an example was given back then about Māori whenua, because it doesn't go into the ETS system, because obviously there's no contribution to leave your land in native, and then how it subsidised the whole of the catchment, because those trusts are talking about cutting that whenua and planting it in pine, because then they go into ETS, but the impact, you know, downstream. So when you look at these conversations for life, because the ETS system don't currently meet their needs, because it's all native. So it's a bigger piece of work, but most probably important, because if they do cut down all their native forests in the upper catchment, what's that going to do to sediment and siltation at the lower end? I'm just saying that because they're having those conversations, because they're saying, hey, we need to plant in pine. And those Māori trusts that need to bring an economic value back to their beneficiaries, which are Māori beneficiaries, and the economics of it says cut that land, cut those trees, put in pine, and you qualify. So yeah, when you go for Land for Life, I'm just saying there needs to be a big conversation with government about how Māori, because you know our beneficiaries on those trusts are saying, hey, we've got nowhere to live. We've got land that doesn't bring us any value. The trusts are under pressure. So what do? And you know, all Whāko, Te Matai, Whare Toto, all blocks that are in that area. And the regional council, they did support one of the trusts 10 years ago to plant an area, but I suppose when you're talking about this, then obviously that engagement needs to be discussed with them as well.
Thank you, Peter. Now I've got the last 20 seconds. It's for Pieri.
Kia ora, Chair. Love your style, keeping us on edge. But I just want to acknowledge on behalf of our committee members here and our chair, you started with your pepeha. Hey, tō tāua nei reo rangatira. And I just want to acknowledge that we heard that. In future, I might just refer to mā tātua ngai tūhoi tēnā koe. But to re-emphasise Baden's point, there are many tongi, there are many proverbs within that talk about our relationship with Land for Life. Whatu ngaro te tangata toi tū te whenua, pai maunga tū te ao, tū te pō, pai tangata ngaro noa. So it's very much ingrained in it. So the greater your participation with Māori landowners, with farms, the better. To move it beyond Mohaka and Pahuwera, you wouldn't find a greater expanse of Māori farms, landowners up in the northern area. You know, Tūwhare Toi, Mahurangi, Pohaturoa, Te Whakaari. Actually, the greater part up there is actually land and corporations, as you've indicated in your paper. So it's worthwhile following through on those. And my last point in that 20 seconds is, do we have a layer, a GIS layer that actually identifies Māori land and corporations in particular across Hawke's Bay? It would be really useful to have that as a layer in the GIS system.
Oh boy. tautoko that whakaaro, then you'll see where all the Māori land is. There's a lot in the north, just saying.
Madam Chair, can I just have a quick one with Michael? We've got a group out at Purangahau called the Purangahau Catchment Group. They're looking for natives. They're in touch with Māori landowners, and they're very, very in touch. I would just ask you to, and I'll refer them to you if you go looking for them. And all the points that you made with the farmers in that general area, they are in touch with them. And they have land plans, every little bit of reserve, they want to plant in it, they're just running short of natives. And they were just out home with the regional council looking at our river, and they exactly the same thing. They're struggling to find the trees to put in them. So I just ask you, and I'll tell Hannah about you.
Kia ora.
No, Greer, we've got Councillor Sears.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll be very brief.
Okay.
Thank you, Michael. Two things. Picking up on Baden's point, just making sure that we capture, he's entirely right, these groups of us that are forming what are effectively farms over multiple land ownership based usually around catchment groups, how we can make sure we capture those types of groups in that business case. But secondly, the ETS submissions are open now for, they closed middle of August, so we will be submitting and just picking up, making sure that we've captured exactly what Peter's talking about, and maybe is there someone from Māori Committee who's especially over ETS stuff that we might just pair up with Ian to make sure that we're capturing that in the view?
I've got a basic understanding because we've been reviewing the ETS, but it's only basic, but it adds no value. What our briefing was, it adds no value to Māori land because we can't basically claim for natives. And I think there's a common view, and that needs to be taken into consideration. That's the main point that all those Māori trusts are saying, because they're saying, well, why leave it at native? And a lot of them are going through replanting programs, but no value in doing it. They're doing it, but
no value.
It's not economic
so
value.
I'll just make sure I can follow up on that when we do our submission, we've checked in with you, Peter, to make sure we've captured that view adequately from the regional council point of view as well. I think that would be really useful. Okay.
I'm happy to feedback some bullet points, but not to do the whole thing as well.
Sure.
It's
Just the piece, just making sure that view's clear as well. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Fantastic. So we have a recommendation that the committee here receives and notes this Land for Life project update, tēnā koe, Michael, and also all of the comments that have been made, including Baden's, Peter's, and this whole committee, actually. Thank you very much for your quarter, but absolutely big ups to you, Michael Bassett-Foss, I've got your name right. Awesome. So really brilliant kaupapa this morning. Ngā mihi. Tēnā koe.
You need to receive the report.
Michael, you've got a card?
You need to receive the report.
So we need to receive the report. Whoever,
Happy to.
thank you very much, Councillor Sears. Seconder?
Yeah.
Thank you, Peter Eden. All of those in favour of receiving that report, say aye.
Aye.
Yeah, it's carried. Thank you very much. And we're moving to item 8, and that's the Tai Whenua reports. Who would like to lead us on the Tai Whenua reports? Māori.
Oh, look, look, sorry, I've only just had a quick print off there, so I'm just going to pass.
Nothing like chucking you on the spot, eh, Māori?
I just want to make a couple of acknowledgements. Firstly, I received an environmental award which was sponsored by the Hawke's Bay Regional Council.
Yeah, I was going to announce that. Congratulations.
Just to acknowledge you anyway, because I was, being right at the front end of the pack, you get stuck for words given that we've been in so many headbutting situations with each other, and in that sort of kind of light of things.
Pass us down.
I just wanted to acknowledge that, and secondly, and what's not in my report too as well, to you, Pieri, because we were up at that MFE Te Mana o Te Wai, and there was a representation of councils, and I just want to acknowledge your input and lead and content direction on that. But also, I think the CEO, was it Fiona? Also, she said it, yep, she said at our table and made reference to you, Nick. I haven't had the opportunity, so just to say that Pieri done well and amongst that kind of situation and scenario. Look, there's an item in my report with regards to an item on the paper, which is item 12 coming up, and I'll leave that discussion. And it's to do with spatial climate vulnerability assessment tool. And a little bit of that was touched on in terms of some of that mapping overlay that you made reference to identify Māori land blocks. But I'll come into it when that part of the agenda, Madam Chair, comes to that point.
Sure.
Just to say that I'm the alternate, along with Paul and along with Roger Marker, in attending the first, and chaired, was that chaired by you? Who was chairing that committee? I can't recall, but I know the integrated, Sophie, you chaired the Integrated Recovery Committee. And I just wanted to highlight how, it's really important that our active participation within those two committees, as things are unfolding horrendously as part of the whole recovery, the whole resilience, building sustainability. And more so, I just wanted to reference the presentations, which I think I did forward on to our governance kind of committee to acknowledge the presentation on behalf of Tom Kay, Fish and Game, Scott Wilson, Lincoln University. I can't remember who the third person was.
On Niwa.
From
Richard,
Niwa.
Richard Measures and Joe.
Yeah, and I certainly think that presentation was really, really important to kind of share that through with this particular committee, if at all possible. I think I take up what Councillor Martin Williams had made when you opened that up, Councillor, and he's saying, oh boy, doesn't this give a shake up to us, and now thinking around making more room for rivers, letting rivers be rivers, and a constriction and constraints that we've put on these systems, particularly around our asset management. And so I'm just going to leave it at that at this stage, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair, can I just very quickly reply? I did actually follow up on that with both of them, who said that they'd presented to Ngāti Kahungunu Fish Hook Summit, if I said that right?
Right.
So
cool.
we can certainly put it there, or have most people seen that now. It was the same presentation, I think.
Awesome. Yeah. I went on leave at that particular point in time, and I've only just gotten back.
So maybe the committee just let through the chair.
If anybody else, it was a
They'd
great
be happy to.
presentation.
Yeah.
I hope it was received well at the Niki Fish Hooks.
Yeah, that was good. Awesome.
Absolutely.
Great. That's me, Madam Chair,
Thank you.
till we come into that item 12.
Kick the pie. Api? Peter?
Yep.
No, cool.
I don't know if everyone's got a copy of the report and that. I can basically go through and summarise, and I suppose for whanganui too, as the councillor said, our focus is on our marae, because obviously our marae have been impacted. Tongoa, Petani, Motio. Motio's in a rebuild stage, rebuilding. Rosie can talk about Petani if she wants to add something, and then I'll carry on with the rest of the report, because Rosie chairs Petani Marae and she's got a number of challenges.
Kia ora koutou, Madam Chair. As you may have seen in the recent release through the papers, that we actually had an injunction put on our rebuild of our wharenui. It went through the Māori Land Court, but it was dismissed. We've only got 0.8 of an acre, which is not even an acre, that our whenua, our marae, sits on. And yes, we've been put in category 3. When we look at that, when we look at why we ended up there over 100 years ago, when it was already deemed as a flooded area, through moving from where our marae used to be on Heipapi to move down into now what is really brought out as a flooded area. So we've just been going through some challenges around our marae, about with our whānau, but also with, we've met with the council, Hawke's Bay Regional Council, and everybody that's connected with our rebuild. It's a sort of sorry space for us. There's nowhere for our marae to go, because we have that strong tie to that whenua as our whakapapa and, you know, this is our tipuna, hey. But wasn't our tipuna that put us there. It was, we were moved there. And so our connection is very strong with that place, but being under Category 3 is an issue, and it is around safety issues. And as we just think from, we met with Bill Bayfield, who actually led that recovery on there, and we've just got a thing now, you know, that it's been out there that to surrender our resource consent that we've been given through the Hastings District Court through Nigel Bickle and him. And I mean, I realise that it is also a tough situation for them and just as tough for us as whānau to that whenua. So we're just going through some of those issues. My issue is just about, you know, PAMPAC have a resilient committee that we sit on as well about looking at stomp bank mitigation of risks and safety around them. But for us as the petani, you know, we can't give our consent to them to build that, even if we're not going to be on our marae, because if it saves them, what does it do for our marae? It's got to be for all, because it just doesn't seem right that we work to protect PAMPAC. They also have to work and down the track that they need to help us to see what happens to our marae. But at this stage, it's about going back to our whānau and seeing what's our next option. And we know there's not a lot of options. I mean, Estelle Valley, 127 homes out there, that places that was destroyed. Listening to Kirsten Wise the other day with what central government are saying about helping to this buyback thing and buyback, you know, the government aren't looking at 100% like it was thought that would be the case, but now there doesn't look like that there's going to be enough to help everybody, and for us, I think we look like we're at the bottom of the chain. So, you know, it's just about where we sit at our marae. So, kia ora.
Tēnā koe, Rosie.
Yeah, so that's just, you know, that's just a highlight of whakangana what Rose and all our marae are going through, and then how we build resilience, and then obviously the tie to the whenua is strong, because it's historical through the urupa that's out at the front of the beach, and we are whānau buried in. So all that goes in with our association with the land. So yeah, challenging times, and I say that in the report. We're looking at, you know, how do we mitigate risk, how do we mitigate the challenges our whānau are going through. Obviously with the tai whenua, we're carrying off operational plans and that, and doing social services, food bank deliveries, and working to support whānau. So it's as all our communities, in Ahuriri, in Estelle and Waiheke, all struggling through just working through plans because it's 6 months now. Some people have been paid insurance and they've had to carry that debt themselves. And so, you know, those are our conversations we're having with government as well. You know, those whānaus with no insurance, those whānaus that have insurance, they haven't been paid, they're paying a mortgage, they're having to pay rent for wharis are staying in. It's all those challenges, so which all the community are facing. So we share the whole community's frustration. And I suppose on a positive note, the tai whenua supported the Māori Business Awards that was held recently, and that was really great to recognise Māori business, and there was Māori businesses recognised in the Māori Business Awards as in their contribution towards the cyclone, because Māori did, our marae that were functional, they stepped up, as they do, and the infrastructure kicked in, supporting the whole community. So we recognise that contribution that our marae and our whānau made, along with other members of the community and international community. Obviously, we had people from Australia, Canada, would turn up with a shovel and start digging at the marae. So, it was a good community and national response. And, it's about recognising all our communities when they step up to help, which they did. So, we just said, keep up the awesome mahi. That's just, I suppose, a shout out to our community, how people come together in times of need. Obviously, and just keeping the focus on the cyclone because, 6 months people start to wane away from it, but there's still people struggling out there. So we don't want to clutter our report with other stuff, but let's focus on, hey, there's still a long way to go. Thanks, Mick.
Can I just quickly cap off what's we at Ko Pātiki, we were extremely fortunate in regards to that we are surrounded by two rivers. But getting back to our whānau over here in Ahuriri and our three maraes affected, and just to make us aware that, holistically, and when it comes to us as Māori, and what we strongly believe in is our henengaro, our tinana, and of course our wairua. And so this is our physical, mental, and our physical well-being, and so what I've noticed with our whānau, there's been a lot of mental stress concerning our whānau of our affected marae, and so that's something that we will have to bear over the next few months, if not years, moving forward. So I thought I'll just, bring that up, which is so important to our whānau.
Appreciate that, Api, thank you.
And I
very
suppose
much.
just statistically, because we've done some work with the Australian recovery team, and that's what they highlighted that they found in relation to over in Australia when they had the wildfires, and then they said the effects on the mental health, and generally it's around that 6 month period for the whole communities that you see those challenges starting to come through. So I suppose there's a recovery, regional council in that recovery space in there, and then making sure we have the right supports to support the whole community, because now's the time when those impacts are felt, because you move out of it into a different response. So I suppose it's just a really important point that Api's raised.
Kia ora. Porangahau.
Do Di
Matua
first,
Paura.
and
Di.
Di give us a tai whenua report first.
Would you like to give an update?
Yeah,
please?
sure.
Turn your volume
Kia ora,
up
can you hear
as
me?
well, please. You're muted.
We can't hear you.
Oh. Can you hear me?
Yes, kei te whai. Awesome. Thank you. You've got 5 minutes. Aroha mai.
Kia ora whānau. I will be very brief. Apologies for no report. The office in Waipokoro are undertaking auditing processes at the moment. But just quickly, from the office, I think our organisation is still reeling from the after effects of JB Smith's passing. He's left a huge hole in our hearts and obviously in our work streams, and that's taking quite a bit of time for us to get back on top of things. But in saying that, Jenny Nelson-Smith has stepped in as our interim chair for the Tai Whenua, and she's really hit the ground running. Huge amounts of work, obviously with flood recovery going on at the same time as JB's passing. So it's a busy time. The flood recovery hubs are still operational in Tamatea. We've got Rongomarairoa, obviously, Papa Paura there. Could elaborate a little bit more, and we've got one small one running from Matueka Marae, dealing with the Waipawa. Just a little bit of news, really. Our whānau that lost the toddler in the floods in the East Valley, they relocated themselves back to Waipawa because that's where their whānau are. And through some tragedy, they've actually just had another baby. She was actually pregnant at that time when they lost their toddler. So they've just welcomed a new little Pepe into their into their whānau. So that's sort of helped a little bit with their tragic loss. But I do say that they are struggling. They're struggling with dealing with that property that they've left behind. So I guess we need some help. And I need to reach out with someone from the Hastings District Council and Hawke's Bay Regional Council, because that whānau cannot and will not deal with it because of their state of their mental health at present. So we've tried to step in to say, look, we will assist you with whatever we need to do with that property, because they just, it's too raw. The emotions are running high with that property, and so if anybody can help us with with sorting out that property, I'd welcome some assistance here. Thank you. Matariki events in Tamatea have started this week and they run all week. Tamanatai or Tamatea, we're still working around a framework and a working model that best suits our Hawke. So we're currently working with Kahu Environmental at the moment to put together our framework. And as you can appreciate, we are inundated with resource consents, mostly around water. And that is it at the moment. Obviously, we've got some pressing issues with, we've got too much water at the moment, and then all of our projects are based around when we don't have enough water.
Yeah.
So we go, and obviously my item on the minor agenda for later. Kia ora, thank you.
Tēnā koe tai. Look, I'm just going to...
Te
Tēnā koe pauda.
komiti matawa Māori. I just want to say to Michael, and I've said it, and I got an address, that we have a committee which may be useful to everyone. It's called the Porangahau Catchment Group, led by a group of women, actually, and they're farmers. And their input is huge, right to the headwaters, right to the mouth of the Porangahau River. Recently, Hana was in Porangahau embracing and reaching out to any Māori group that respond. And we had the Regional Council river men there to advise us on what they could do on our river and what we could do alongside. And Hana's drive was to, everywhere she could, she would put natives and encourage the hapu no Porangahau to respond. And I was just saying to Michael that her big cry was for trees. And they've got a growth project going. What do you call it? Where people grow the trees and they farm the seedlings out to me. So it's huge. And the initiative came from them. And in terms of what Michael spoke of first about all the farms, I've been a part of a drive that she put a great program together, and she's in touch with just all the farmers around Wallingford, Flemington, and anywhere she can, where all the headwaters of Te Auru Kaitai and the Porangahau River reach to. So I give her a big plug for that effort, and it's an inspiration, and anyone else that can think up something like that is one of those things and takers that I as a member support wholly. Secondly is I'm a victim of the floods, so I can talk from the heart. Today I've got the members of a group that the Tai Whenua have funded for us to help us refurb our places. And they're under my house getting the last of the silt out. And I had one of the other members from the hapu in a shed yesterday, the last of my flooded sheds. And this is pretty much what's gone on around Porangahau for the last 6 months. And we had a very good response from the public with funds, etc. And the hub was set up right from the day one, and that hub is still in place today. And they prepare a kai for people like myself. I'm living in a caravan, and to get a breakfast and a bit of lunch, and the girls no longer cook tea, so I have to cook my own tea. But right from the word go, we had breakfast, dinner and tea, and it's quite that quietly people are beginning to learn how to fend for themselves. A point that Uppy made about mental. I think the Heretonga services, support services that have all come to Porongahau to probably a little underutilised, and largely because we didn't know they were coming. And we've learned that the people concerned have a great difficulty of going to the hub to voice their concerns. And if I could advise, and from my heart, those people came and had a yarn with me in my home. And that's probably the only way I can express it best, is that I don't have to rush off to Australia to see my sons to get the same service. I just make that as a likeness because it's possible. So I just want to thank not only just to info us on the Heretonga Tai Whenua and that support service, huge, Māori.
Kia ora.
Our Tai Whenua from the Tamate, huge support, still in place. They run the work schemes out there as well as our cookhouse. And we're a bit of a, I'm starting to get a bit emotional here. I'm trying to think. Our pa went under the water, and so Rongorairo was closed. Our wharepakos were damaged. The wharekai is total refurb. We haven't got a kitchen at the minute. They've just completed all the jibbing, etc., and the floors, and they've painted it even. So it's quite difficult working without a marae. However, we've got a workforce that's working down there and working towards an end, and hopefully that will be in the not too distant future. But all in all, flood-wise, we're doing okay. I went to a meeting just recently, and it was the Central Hawke's Bay Reserves Management Plan a meeting, and it was about bylaws for what they call freedom camping.
Yep.
And big learning curve. When I went into the meeting, I thought freedom camping was about the camps that they call what I term as a freedom camp. There's a camp where caravanners can come along and you can camp, and the council, in Porongahau, the council runs one thing, and it's got a whare paku in it and have a service to pick up things. So I was thinking, those are the bylaws. But it actually turned out the council was going to give us a rundown on their thoughts. And that meeting started off by the people from Porori voicing some heartfelt concerns. And that lady, Jenny Nelson-Smith, said to Duncan, we'll do this meeting this way. And the meeting turned out to be not a council-run meeting, but a Māori-run meeting. And we spent the time in workshops and talking about the coastline for Porongahau and all the other hapu up close to us. And I must say, it was a lovely change from me sitting there taking notes from council to us, council sitting there taking notes from us for a couple of hours. And we've yet to see what the outcome of that will be. But for me, it was a nice change.
And what I learned from that is that freedom camping is not only about the freedom camps where caravanners can go, it's about council now looking at, when I go to Paramahu to camp, there's a thought they want to put a bylaw on there about how I do that. What I've asked them to do is that I've seen their council put a wharepaku here, there and everywhere, is that that's a good idea. And I've got plenty of good ideas, and I'd like them to listen to us first before they sit and tell us what we can or can't do. And the reason I ask that is because I've been doing that all my life, all my dad's life, and all my grandfather's life. So we've got a bit to contribute about how a bylaw might look in that instant where it's not everyone goes to it. But I've never had to worry about laws when I went to camp at Paramahu or Waimarama or Paurere, because for all those years, my grandfather, my father and myself and my children, we taught ourselves how to have a crate. No one got sick. Everyone got kai. They took it all home. So it's great to be able to just impart a little bit of that knowledge back.
Thank you, Matua.
For a change. So all in all, Madam Chair,
Thank you much.
that's us for Porangahau.
Kia ora, Paula.
Kia ora.
Well, Wide will take ours as read, but just one little point that we've had a discussion about is that, whitebait season's hitting us. Rumours. And so one of the rumours was we hear that dock might be closing our season, so that won't go very well on our river.
Won't go well on ours
And hence
either.
why I put it in my report. And just to give also an update on the Wairau wastewater discharge consent process, it's cruising along pretty nicely now. Our mana whenua rōpū that's kind of going to navigate the next 15 years with the Wairau District Council are kind of really, really solid now. We're not checking away. And thanks to our Ngāti Kahungunu natural resources team, that's Niall and Shade. From day dot, they've always been there. So this is a good example of a PSG and the Tai Whenua working together for the greater good for everyone. So that's just a little snippet of my report. Not to mention that we had an awesome fish hook summit just last week before, where we actually had some amazing guests from Niwa, like you heard this morning, we had Forest and Bird making the rivers wider. We had the feedback from the Aquafur guys, think holistic. And also got a kahununu taiao update, which is just fantastic. It just helps us rein in, replan, rework together. What's our start? So watch the space. Also, just to let you know, the Wairoa Tai Whenua is also closed. Our staff is working offline and online. Our building is getting worked on. It's something that the Wairau District Council has fast-tracked. We also have a discretionary funding fund that was set up. It's called the Hikitea Fund, and we found that a lot of our whānau, hapu, friends, found it difficult to just award it to the mayoral fund. I'm just saying, it was just to really go to places where they were filling in the gaps, discretionary fund, so that was set up. That's been set up under the Wairoa Tai Whenua, and we've already issued out pūtea to those affected directly. So, on that note,
Happy to move that building.
we just would...
I know we're the newest addition to this committee, and we haven't finished reports in the past, but whakaro pēr ma shade mai whakatakutu wet tētahi ripoata, hei pānuitanga mā tātou, so that going forward, our team, like you say, Katarina, they are very active, and they can give you a report on what's happening on a pūtaiao space. But But in terms of the recovery, the iwi is very busy at the moment and around the temporary housing space, 100 cabins for whānau in impacted areas. So if you haven't heard about that, well, then you should have heard about that, because they should have been in contact, especially the maraes that have been struck in around temporary housing, getting some cabins there for the whānau. So, but yeah, just cheers, just in the future, yeah, we can put a report in it.
I'm the beer recipient.
Okay, and just finally, Mike?
Happy to remove the reports, Tawhina reports that we received.
Okay, and we have a seconder for that? Awesome, all those in favour of these reports, say aye. Aye. Okay, we'll carry that, and we're going to move directly on to item number 10. That's our statutory advocacy update.
Kevin, I Chair.
Oh, thank you very much. And you have 10 minutes. Thank you.
According to all that, yep.
Tēnā koe. Nau mai, hara mai.
Yep, Noreen, still.
Take it away, Dan.
Yeah, I'll take this paper as read. In my many years with this organisation, I don't think I've ever seen such a lengthy statutory advocacy update. We'll just put that out there. There's a lot in there, and a lot of it is updates, as in green underlined text. Not just, well, there's stuff happening locally, but the mountain of work that's coming out of central government Wellington is reasonably well documented here, and that's only the resource management related mahi out of central government, let alone all the other stuff. You'd possibly fooled into thinking that, oh yeah, elections are just around the corner for the government, so therefore all engines stop. No, there are some items in here which have drawn to a bit of a key milestone completion of some of the works, such as we now have a national policy statement issued for Indigenous biodiversity, another one on industrial process heat and greenhouse gas emissions, and several other things. But the work continues on other fronts around resource management reform, discussion documents on various things. So this paper just sets out in a reasonably succinct form, tries to, some of those things. I heard earlier in this morning's discussion, someone, might have been Peter, perhaps, forgive me if I got it wrong, some curiosity around Three Waters items. Look, to be honest, the Three Waters reform package is not really squarely in Hawke's Bay Regional Council's lane. We will continue to be the regulator of water takes and discharges. We are not really in the business of servicing or supplying water. We're not in the business of providing wastewater disposal systems. So if you are curious about the implications of the Three Waters legislation in its more rounded form, I don't think the Regional Council has that expertise and awareness. You'd be better off kind of knocking on the doors of the TLAs or TPK or DIA or someone like that.
So in relation to, I think, just to highlight our submission was, because it did include water and pipes, and then in the submission potentially we'll put forward, that's what we're saying, because on the whole I was happy with this, with the Three Waters, well, I should say the collective appeared, I'm happy with the Three Waters around the legislative changes in that, but then obviously it just appeared that it missed water and pipes, it wasn't included in the thing, so potentially our submission will reflect that. Because that'll go through, because that all those readings in that for Three Waters, that'll get through with the current government in place. You know, they're going to meet the threshold or the time frame to implement that. Is that correct?
That's my understanding of their intention. Okay. And there's only a few more days really of Parliament sitting that they can get through their long list of to-dos.
A long list, list of to-dos.
But the indication is Three Waters will roll through under the current government. Would that be fair to say, or just? Thank you, Krista.
No,
we'll wait and see.
hold your breath.
Sorry.
So, yeah, happy to take any questions.
Anyway.
Kia ora, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Gavin, and totally agree with you. Your team's under the pump. It might be useful to maybe share with us recovery type policy and planning the team is focused on, i.e. swirler, what's in swirler, and how that's changed or added to the landscape of policy and planning within our organisation.
So this paper sets out, is that on page 39? I
Page
think, of the
39,
agenda?
yes,
A number of the orders in council
yes.
proposals under SWELA, or the Severe Weather Emergency Recovery legislation. Some of those orders in council listed in the table are already in effect. So there's things like amendments in place already for Local Government Act, annual plan, bits and bobs. But then right down through to, what's next on the list? Outdoor burning, enabling outdoor burning of cyclone waste on rural land, which would otherwise be a prohibited activity. Those kind of orders in council are in place already. The government has passed them. But there's a whole swag of current proposals around temporary accommodation, streamlining some RMA plan change processes to enable permanent accommodation, permanent residential accommodation, including papakainga there. One thing that's really in our team's policy planning sites is around the extensions of time, or the proposal for an extension of time frame around how long do we need to give effect to the NPS for freshwater management, given that the organisation and communities have been severely disrupted in their mahi by the cyclone and its ongoing after effects. MFE's proposal there is that an order in council would be passed to give the Regional Council and Gisborne District Council up to 3 years extension on its December 24 deadline out to December 2027.
Yeah. So essentially, Given, it means that the work we embarked on together for the Kotahi plan, the extension has been granted to have that work complete by 2027, or unless the minister calls that work in.
That's the
before that
proposal,
date.
at least as far as freshwater planning goes.
Yeah.
You may be aware that the Kotahi plan proposal was to be much more than just freshwater. It would be land, air, coast, biodiversity, infrastructure, a whole swag of things.
Kevin, can you just elaborate on also some of the extensions around the water consents?
So there is an order in council proposed at the moment, and feedback closes, I've been closed last night, that there was about 50 consents in the Tank catchment area, or Hiratonga catchment area, that the applicants didn't apply within the necessary timeframe to get a replacement application in the door before a statutory sunset clause. They didn't get their applications in the door because Cyclone Gabrielle came knocking and disrupted things. In the law, there is no ability for the council to grant them an extension or waive their missed timeframe. The order in council that is currently proposed would essentially deem those water take activities permitted activities, or I think it deemed permitted activities until May next year. So it gives them an extra bit of breathing space.
Based on the same conditions.
Exactly, yep. So whatever the conditions were of their pre-existing consents would also roll over and apply to their deemed permitted activities. So there's no intention of giving them any extra leniency or screwing the scrum or anything like that. It's just trying to find a legislative instrument that gives them life, I suppose, which evaporated in the midst of Cyclone Gabrielle's impacts.
If I may, Madam Chair, too, as well. Just
Marty.
a couple of things. I guess in regards to the fast tracking process, which EPA kind of has override, I understand. And those are starting to kind of arrive in amongst the space to expedite, I guess, or just ensure that the recovery and the resilience things, but in amongst that are a couple of fast track. Just want to acknowledge the application that the council have approved in terms of the Wairātahi, and that's the Heretaunga Tamaki Settlement Trust, in terms of where that's been approved, and also just note those that have been in decline. Yeah, I guess that's kind of coming on to our radar with a couple of applications, and I know that just, keeping in the right lane, given that we are, and basically the messaging here is that these things are fast track, and they do take a very short time frame based on, of course, a lead commissioner making decisions. It's very important that if any of these are falling within your respective areas, and given that this impact has come within both Ahuriri and Heretaunga as a result of the post weather events, just to be, as Darren has said, there was a close-off date. These orders and councils are coming on, as you see in the report. I just got a little bit stuck in terms of where in the opening sum of the reason for the report, an item as it's numbered in 3, in all cases the regional council is not the decision maker, applicants nor proponent in statutory advocacy projects. The regional council is purely an agency with an opportunity to make comments or load submission. How do global consents, particularly the gravel consents, kind of fit? Can you just give me is that statement correct in terms of?
It is, yeah, yep.
So we just,
This report that's presented to you and also to the Regional Planning Committee is about this organisation's outward advocacy to third-party proposals. Just to clarify your earlier comment about the Wairātahi fast-track consent, the Regional Council has not made a decision on that. It is the Minister. We provided feedback on our proposal, and that will be the same for all the other fast-track consenting applications. The Regional Council is not the decision maker. We're potentially a submitter like anyone else in that process. So in terms of global gravel consent applications, so I'm presuming this is in relation to gravel extraction consents in rivers. Yep. It's a bit different because in that kind of context, the Regional Council wears 2 hats. One is the consent decision maker, the consent authority, and then one is the applicant or the holder of the consent. So we wrestle with finding a firewall between those 2 hats to make sure that they're not interfering with or influencing one another.
Can I just add to that there's a level of independence in between that? So the council, and Chris is probably here to explain it further if need be, having that independence, that consultancy to help with application to the consent team to provide that barrier.
Yeah, exactly. That's one element of the firewall that I kind of alluded to, that we use contractors or independent hearings commissioners if the need arises for those sorts of things.
So you spoke about one element. What are the other elements? I take it there's more than one element, so you said that's one element.
As an organisation, we have a group manager and heading up the regulatory arm of the organisation. We have a group manager, Chris Dolly, who heads up the asset management thing. So then organisationally and leadership-wise, they're in two silos, but two arms.
So has this been independently peer reviewed?
I would say
or do you review it yourselves?
The practices are
policy
pretty common across local government, probably across many businesses, so it's not unique to Hawke's Bay Regional Council. For example, Napier City Council probably needs to apply to itself for various resource consents from time to time.
So I'm not questioning that. I'm questioning to make sure that there's good, robust policy and process in place to ensure, as you say, you're wearing 2 hats. We all know what it's like to sit around wearing multiple hats. We do it every day. And it's hard work keeping those hats separated. but there's a extra level of responsibility on councils, given that you are a regulator as well as the consent holder. So how do you police yourself, basically? What have you got in place to make sure that you, if you like, are applying the rules equally to yourselves as you do to others?
Would you like to answer to that? Sure.
Tēnā koutou katoa, te motu o Guernsey ahau, ko Nick Pete tōku ingoa. Sorry, I haven't had the chance to introduce myself before. I just wanted to say very briefly before I answered the question. There's real clarity for me, sitting in my role, that an application from the regional council to itself has to be treated exactly the same way as any other application would be. So the regulatory team act agnostically of who the applicant is. And if the regulatory team here needs to seek external advice on an application from the regional council, it will do so independently of the asset management team and vice versa. And if something is needing to be notified and publicly notified, then it goes through exactly that process. In some ways, the scrutiny of that process exercised by the regulatory team is higher when it comes to something that's an application from the council to itself. And I'm absolutely firm on that. So in a previous life, I have taken regulatory enforcement action against another arm of the same body for failing to meet the conditions of its consent. So I think be rest assured that that process is in place and working.
So is there a policy in place that supports the actual process?
It's supported by the legislation, so the RMA requires that of us. Any decision we have to take is open to judicial review and challenge, and I'm firm that we have to be, should that ever occur, we need to be able to stand up in the court of law and say we followed the correct process under the legislation.
Thank you, Nick. Appreciate that.
Okay, we'll kind of, if there's no one else, followed by, okay, we'll take Councillor Sears, followed by Baden, and we've got to kind of wrap this up. But so long as it's 30 seconds, so we're going to take Councillor Sears. Kia ora.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll talk really fast. I did think that the exploring the biodiversity credit system for New Zealand consultation and possible submission might be something of real particular interest for this committee. So I'm wondering how far you've got in the investigation of the document, how it might relate to a little bit what Peter's talking about before, and established native forest, if that would be relevant, and how this committee might feed into any submission we make.
Very good point. Probably fair to say that we're still familiarising ourselves and understanding implications of the new national policy statement for Indigenous biodiversity. Therefore, that will set the context about how this proposal biodiversity credit system may or may not work for us. So there's room, shall we say, to accommodate any feedback that this committee may have on that credit proposal.
Yeah, that was my question as well around how that around the bio, because I think that's an important step moving forward. I'd say about the structure and how that's all going to work. It's quite a big conversation.
Indeed.
Just in terms of crafting up an orders in council, does that have to come from the? How do you go about doing that? You know, I mean, could this committee frame up an orders in council to be ratified and supported?
So to be clear, despite the title, Orders in Council, it is not something that local government produce or issue. Orders in Council is a legislative instrument passed by central government. Orders in Council perhaps could come to central government's table in several ways. Through lobbying, through the, what's an example, primary sector group, saying that we need relaxation of a prohibition on burning in order to deal with this waste. the ministers instruct their officials to look at that proposal and work through a process. Equally, there are some lessons already learnt by New Zealand in terms of the Canterbury quakes, the Kaikoura quakes. There's other examples already in place where orders in council have been used. As far as this Hawke's Bay Regional Council proposing something, that is also a possibility, but we would need to create a proposition or a business case and put that to the relevant minister. So it might be the Minister for the Environment, for RMA related things, or it might be Minister of Local Government for an LTP, long-term plan, whatever it might be type of thing. So far, we as in staff have been kind of holding conversations with government officials. We haven't officially requested or filed any proposals to the relevant ministers. But if there was a need for that in the future, then the expectation would be that it would be running through the Cyclone Recovery Committee channel.
I'm just thinking, we've got a couple of marae here that are in a very precarious position. That the maraes are in category 3. Motio, Petane, Motio, you
No,
you too.
they're going to repeal it.
Tangoio. So that might actually need a, a bit of thinking around that, because I'm listening to Fire here about the predicament that they have. And I just, how do we find a solution? That's where I wanted to get to after her quarter, was how do we here find a solution for what they're dealing with? Because under category 3, they don't have too many options, but there might be an orders in council for the marae. I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud, that's something that's just how we can tautoko and support our whānau.
Through you, Chair, I wonder if that's a conversation we could take up with Herawini from DPMC, who's running that whenua Māori process. That would probably be the best place. And if you want me to join you in that conversation.
Yeah, well, that's why I asked. Did they have to come out of here? No, they come out of central government.
They can come out of anywhere. Yep.
Oh, boy, that was quite a robust discussion. Sorry that we have to end this part. So we're looking for...
Just got a correction to Three Waters. I know it's called affordable waters now. They've changed the terminology. So, yeah, just so you're all aware.
Yeah, I still call it Three Waters.
Yeah.
So move Peter to receive the report. Second Baden.
Thank you, Peter, for moving our report, for moving the statutory advocacy report. Thank you. Second by Baden. All of those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Awesome.
I just got a question in regards to, because around the commissioner training, we've all done, well, some of us have done it, and then with all the changes, I know there's been email going around and that, because obviously, we just got to be aware with the changes in the RMA and the Act and all that, just where we sit as commissioners in that process, and then updating our knowledge in that area.
Look, whānau, it's lunchtime, and we've actually got the CU's report. We're kind of 15 minutes late. I just want to ask your support, because we have the tung oil.
Clifton Tutangoyo and Simon Bendel is only available till 12:15.
And 12:15 is like in 13 minutes, and I just want to put it to the table. Could we bring this forward now before lunch, and then follow through after lunch with the CE's update?
Yep.
Do I have your total of that?
Aye.
Okay, we're going to rip straight into it, and we've got him online. Have we, Pierre?
No.
Is he here? Oh, kia ora. Thank you very much. So we're going to have lunch after that, and followed by our CE after lunch.
Thank you, Chair.
You're welcome.
And just a mihi to Nick. Sorry, Nick, we should have formally at the start just welcome you on board. I know we've done it at the whawhiri and that, but just a big mihi to you and your new role.
Kia ora, thank you. And look forward to working with you, and maybe we talk a bit more of the CE's report.
Yep.
Aye.
Kia ora, Chris. No mai hara mai.
Morena tātou. Sorry for holding you up from your lunch, but was keen to get Simon online. He's just coming online now. We just have to let him in. So this is a normal sort of update to the committee on the Clifton to Tangai Coastal Strategy and where we're at. And so I'll get Simon to talk to the paper. Really, the two key components of this update was around really the deferral of consultation. So we were planning on consulting in August 2023, and we've pushed that back because of the impact to the cyclone. And we were also planning to have Aramanu Raupahi here today, but to talk to the Te Ao Māori workstream, but she's unfortunately sent in her apologies, so we're unable to do that. So they were the two key parts. Happy to really take the paper as read and then answer any questions.
I suppose I could start if we go straight to questions.
Start off, please.
Yep. And I suppose I'll just bring a question that was asked from the committee in general this morning. And obviously with the cyclone effects on the coast, we're all aware of that. The silt deposits increased and that. And from a customary perspective, and we raised it in the conversations this morning about the responsibilities of council, then obviously with the kaitiaki space and our designated kaitiaki issuing permits out on the moana and that, and yeah, there's just, I suppose within that coastal strategy that's going to affect them. And then making sure in the process that so, and I know we've raised it before, that's accommodated as we go through this corridor, because then, when we're talking about closed, I think they closed areas off during the cyclone when the spill went out and that. So I just suppose in any strategy would be very important to recognise what they bring in. Those kaitiaki are represented from Mahia right down to Wairarapa. And I suppose the board, we had Pōra Tapu come and present to the board previously, and regard him and Robin Huppy co-chair that group, so most probably an important part of the process moving forward, just to make you aware, because that came up previously, and then we just need to make sure that group's represented in any coastal strategy.
Yeah, so that's taken on board.
Yeah, kia ora, Simon. The cyclone, this project is to protect us from the ocean coming in.
Kia ora.
But now we've got the rivers going out, we've got the ocean coming in. Has it changed the landscape of the project in terms of the mitigations that we're needing to have and be mindful of post Gabriel? That's a question. Kia koe, kia kōrua.
So I'm happy to attempt some answers to the question. So I guess there's consistency in terms of the principle of being resilient. So we're talking about resilience of communities around living with rivers, and we're talking about resilience of communities living with climate change. So on that part, there's consistency going forward, and I know from that perspective, it's very hard to prioritise between a coastal strategy and the work that we're doing, repairing our flood control schemes and drainage schemes, because they're both connected to the resilience of the community.
I'll just get more specific, because it talks about a managed retreat, but you're retreating to the rivers now, and we can't retreat there anymore. So in terms of land categorisation and the impact that it has on this project, there's got to be some impacts because the landscape's different. So that's what I'm saying. Does how we had it planned 2, 3, 4 years ago, does it still stack up?
Yeah.
Because my feeling would be no. It's a bit different than it was 3 or 4 years ago. We're talking managed retreat, pushing home one back, the coast back, but you're pushing them straight into category 3, 2 zones now, and so in terms of the planning, it might need a bit of a rethink.
So I think just to recap on the strategy, many of the first elements of the strategy were about defending in the short term. So they wouldn't necessarily change, and remembering this is a strategy that's been built up from the community, ground up. It hasn't been a top-down strategy. So there'll be strong expectations within the community that the strategy put forward to the community will be a starting point for the council, but that still needs to be resolved. So there was, under this strategy, managed retreat in outer years, and as part of that process, we were very careful to try and understand where would people retreat to. So we've specifically tried to find potential areas of lower hazard in Hawke's Bay, acknowledging that between all the hazards we have, many of those hazards affect much of the whenua, and so we didn't necessarily want to be in a place where we're taking people from one hazard-prone area to another hazard-prone area. So we might have to dust that off, but at a high level, we wanted to demonstrate, from a theoretical perspective at least, that we had safe land for people to move to. So that would require a bit of a quick look, but it's I don't think it's fundamentally flawed, because many of the hazards that we picked up in that process were the river flooding hazards, so we weren't putting people, in some of those areas. But I think a good point, and we probably just need to dust off that previous work to check with the current knowledge set.
And just add a point to Baden, because we've been contacted by whānau living out at Tongoia that are going to, they're at category 3, and they've said they're not moving off their whare. They said, who is council to tell us when we've got nowhere to go to? You know what I mean? So, yeah, it's an interesting conversation that's going to come up. Do you forcibly force whānau out of their whare? Because the coast and the whare, those are the challenges that people are asking us as leaders within those base. And then, I don't know if the questions are really, I did read some stuff about it, but it hasn't really, if someone just does, they're not going to move, then what do you do to, I don't know.
Through you, Chair, at the moment, it's purely voluntary, but I think what you're both alluding to, and I'd agree with, is that longer term, there's a strategic conversation for all of us, together with the TAs, about what does this collective picture mean for us in the future. So if we're going to give rivers room, and we're taking a 100-year horizon, but we're also going to deal with the fact that we've got a Hikurangi fault just off the coast, and so on. What does our collective future look like? And I guess some people put that in the terms of, we've got to write a spatial plan. I kind of go, a spatial plan is just a mechanism. The first thing we've got to do is have a conversation together about what do we feel our collective future might look like, and that's I think something we need to dedicate some real time to once we've got through this immediate, make people safe as we can recovery process. And if that's something that people around this tepu and other tepus in the district councils and so on, we want to join forces on, I'm in for the conversation, because I think it's really important.
And just to point in, because you covered off Mātauranga Māori right through your whole report, so most probably be interesting to go through that at some stage, just around definition and that. And I know that the person's not here that's going to talk, but it's right through the whole report, so it'd be good to hear how that's been framed up and the definition around Mātauranga. And then I suppose Petty and that team's involved with that, so it'd be good to...
So maybe we invite Simon just to talk through the high-level intent of that work package.
Any at all?
Yeah, they have.
Sure. Kia ora koutou. Of course, Simon Bendel, tōku ingoa. Sorry I can't be there in the room today. Does my sound okay?
Yes.
Cool, thank you. Okay. And also, just as mentioned, apologies from Aramanu. Oh, now my dog starts barking. That's perfect timing. Apologies from Aramanu Dōpiha. She was hoping to be here today to speak to you as well, but had an engagement with her mokopuna playing sport today. So we thought best she do that, and I'll try and cover questions you may have. So in broad terms, you've picked on this question about defining Mātauranga Māori, and I guess to take it back to first principles, really this whole work stream that we're talking about today, that's part of the strategy now, is designed to address a real gap we have in our project right now. Where over a number of years we've tried a few different ways to engage effectively with tangata whenua and haven't nailed it, to be honest. So there is a bit of a gap in terms of how that input is woven through the strategy. In past years we've attempted to attend hui, we've sent letters out, and it has been, I think, not innovative enough to be successful. So this Mātauranga Māori work stream is really about trying to shift the burden back onto the strategy and resource internally to help that conversation work better. So that's really its intent. The first step in the project under this new work stream is to do a bit of a literature review of what's out there now, so we can work out what tangata whenua have already said about the values that attach to the coastline in this area and how we can best start to capture that as a baseline to engage further. So it is starting now. It's very early days. We are keen to keep you updated and come back. We suggest every 6 months or so, but if you'd like it more or less, let us know. Also in your agenda pack is the Mātauranga Māori workstream scope itself. So if there are any questions specifically on that, more than happy to go to that, but it is really a work in progress. And I see it as a real change in how we're attempting to engage, rather than putting the burden on tangata whenua, trying to resource up internally and do a better job of that. So that's kind of the brief summary. I hope that's helpful, but happy to go any further questions on it.
Any questions around the table?
It's just around the engagement strategy to make sure, because we've got whānau that work in that space, or you know what I mean, and then like you're saying, and for those whānau, like we're saying at the start, that everyone's doing different mahi, and it's just a matter of them putting time. But as a kaitiaki myself on the moana and co-chairing that committee, it is an important space for us to work in, because it has huge impact. With whānau on our marae, with customary permit, all that stuff. So very important. And then I'll raise that at the board meeting of my key paratua. I know Baden sits on that board as well. So we'll raise it in that meeting, and then Chris come back to some for feedback from Robin and Porter. Yep. Okay.
Thank you.
Councillor Sears.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Sure.
Chris, Peter brought up earlier around some of the silt and marine environmental issues, and you mentioned the coastal hazard strategy, but my understanding that's sitting with the science team. Are these two kind of meeting in the middle that look together, or do they sit quite separately?
So I think they're sort of separate but together. So there's quite different functions, and this comes to the earlier question around consenting as well. So obviously the science team are trying to understand the impact of the current or recent silt load on the health of the moana. But as a potential applicant, we also have to understand what our potential impact is in terms of a coastal strategy and how that might temper or influence other factors. So the work streams are separate, and we are doing work around an environmental work stream. That's more around preparation for consenting, to understand the environment that we would potentially enter, to understand our potential impact and offsets for that environment. But the science team obviously are doing their work from a science knowledge perspective. And then ultimately, if we did consent, then there'd be other experts engaged by the consenting authority to review any of the information that we submit. And they may or may not be advised internally by the science team, and more often than not, it's external advice to maintain that separation within the organisation.
So supplementary, Madam Chair?
Sure.
So, Peter, were you looking for, because that might be really interesting for this committee, for the science team to bring back what they're discovering just in terms of the science of what's happened, or were you specifically interested in what Chris is talking about?
That'd be great, mostly both reports. And then I suppose just in our discussions of NIWA, we're looking at putting someone on when they send their research coming back to get one of our whānau members that are interested in that to actually go on the boat and then spend some time out there when they actually go through taking core samples and that, and I think they had a lot of debris they discovered up towards Wairoa Mahia way or up that coastline in their recent survey that they've done. So, yeah, I think it's a important step moving forward, and like for us, it's just finding someone that's got that interest that we can have a go-to person, whether it's a rangatahi, and yeah, so we're. Yeah, just so table that we're going to potentially, and fishery or MPI have come back and said, yep, if you've got someone we can potentially put on their boat when they come up and do some surveying up here, which will go and with it, what you're doing. So any support, and then it'd be good if we've had someone within our Taiao unit team that can do that type of mahi. It might be Naya, I don't want to put them in the cart, but whoever it is.
Maybe if we could take an action through you, Chair, just to I'll ask the science team to maybe brief this committee on the kind of mahi it's got going on post-cyclone, which would be a broader view. It'll include the moana, but more
That'd be
broadly
much
on the whenua
appreciated.
as well.
That'd be much appreciated.
And I think that we had that as one of our action points we discussed this morning, just the workshop, because it's quite a big conversation. And I suppose when you look at from operational level, a lot of our whānau go out there getting kaimoana, and that so it does directly impact. And then when a measure for them is when we're saying, as an example, in Ahuriri, when we were saying, hey, don't go out there and get any kutai, any mussels, and don't go there fishing. And that, obviously, we got a lot of feedback. Hey, why are you telling us that? So, you know what I mean, when you look at that whole strategy and the implementation, it affects people from a ground level when it's in their day-to-day life type activities.
And just a comment from myself on behalf of the Tai Whenua is to also, there's a lead there to connect you to the Kiuta Ki Tai strategy, and that already looks like the moana, that already looks at freshwater. So that would be a great starting point, because there's also cases in there. So if you could just like check into our Tai Whenua, I'd recommend you to Niall at the moment. He's got all our overarching plans for Ngāti Kahununu, Te Matoa Māui. So that's just a starting point to help our wahine that's not here today. If there isn't anything else, we're going to move to lunch. Is any final closing? Mare?
Just move the report, Madam Chair.
We'll move the report. We've got a mover? There, Mare, second by?
Yes.
Thank you very much. All of those in favour of this report, we'll move this report as taken. Say aye. Aye. Right, that's carried. Whānau, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Chris Dolly and the crew. We're going to break for lunch, and we'll be back with the CEO and other things afterwards. So, yeah, have a good break, and we'll see you. We only got half an hour. On item 11, and we've got the HBRC chair and our CE who's going to give the update. And Hinawai, you're all going to start off first.
Kia ora, Chair. Kia ora koutou.
We'll just hide it, Tonu.
Kia ora koutou.
We'll just hide it, Tonu. You'll have to be on time.
Over there.
Yeah.
Ka pai, I'll try and keep this as brief as I can, but there's a menu of updates to provide. And just to acknowledge that we have 6 councillors present. I think that might be a record, Mike.
Whoa.
Ka pai. And obviously, part of the last 4 weeks is to awhi our new CE, Nick, into the organisation, which he's done brilliantly. So a big mihi to you, Nick. Also to acknowledge Matua Mare. I couldn't have think of anyone more deserving than you to receive the Tupua Nuku Taiao Award at Omahu. At Omahu Marae Matariki celebrations. It was a fantastic night hosted by the Ngāti Piringa Hapu. All right, so I'm going to kick off with some figures, if that's kei te pai. So the rapid rebuild of our flood protection, all the breaches in Tutaikuri and Ngaruroro rivers were repaired in record time, less than 4 months post Cyclone Gabrielle.
Wow.
So a big mihi to our assets management team led by Chris, the committed contractors who stayed on site. It was very smart the way it was done. 13 pods of around 160 men and women who worked on a site and then to the next site, to the next site. Okay, so that was amazing work. And a lot of that work benefited our 2C asterisks in the land categorisation, moved them to a 1. Okay, so they could get back on with their life. It didn't interfere with their insurance policies moving forward. So big mihi to those teams. The scours and other lesser damage are now being repaired, and we should have them all done by summer.
All right.
In terms of silt and waste recovery, a lot of the mahi have been done under the Recovery Task Force, which is a Hastings District Council, Hawke's Bay Regional Council collaborative project. More than 500,000 cubic metres of silt has been shifted, and another 1 million expected to be shifted. So in our system, we have around 500 jobs received, and we've done about 60% of those jobs.
Well done.
We have 7 live sites that are for wood, mixed weights and clean silt. Tests are still encouraged in terms of the silt contamination, but at present there are no elevated contaminants anywhere new that our teams have come across. So that's a bit of a picture of what some of our staff are working on. I'd like us to move to land categorisation. So many of you have been aware of this since the Crown announced it in May. It's a Crown framework on assessing risk, low risk, medium risk, sort of high risk, if I could put it that way, 1, 2 and 3. And just an acknowledgement and a mihi, but also, ka aroha to Tangoio and Pietane in our 3s and all the whānau in 3s. We as a regional council have been focused on category 2, which looks at flood mitigation solutions, how to move 2s to 1s as quickly as possible. As part of that have been the negotiations that we have entered into as a region with the other councils. On the 10th of June, we commissioned across all councils the former Cabinet Minister Chris Finlayson, KC, to lead our negotiating team. Remembering this is for general titled land because the Crown decided to take a separate pathway for whenua Māori land negotiations.
Wow.
And that is led by Herewini Te Koha on behalf of the Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet in their office. So this week is a big week for us coming to the end of those negotiations. This week, councils will be deliberating within their council meetings. Ours is this afternoon. Wairoa is this afternoon, so apologies from Nick and I if we have to leave early to tautoko Wairoa's meeting.
Thank you.
Hastings and Napier tomorrow, and I'm not sure about Central Hawke's Bay. But essentially by the end of this week, the region will know where the councils collectively sit in the recovery package that has been offered by the Crown. They focus on three key areas: the buyouts of Category 3, flood mitigation works, particularly for our 2s to move them to a 1, and also $150 million in transport bridge repair costs. So that's the update on land categorisation and negotiations.
Can I just,
You got time for a quick question?
Yeah, sure.
yeah, thanks, anyway, for the update. I guess from a kanohi Māori, iwi Māori perspective, because we're part of Matariki, we've been part of recovery with the councils since day one. We've been part of the response, civil defence, you name it. But we found out, like everyone else, you know, through the press stuff that came out earlier in the week about these negotiations. And, you know, my question is, where's the Māori voice and where's the Māori lens over the negotiations? We're not a council, you know, I'll say that up front, but our people aren't just living on whenua Māori. Our people are, half of those 2 stickers are our people. You know, we do have Tāngoio, Mōtio and Petani in terms of that whenua Māori part, but the majority of our people were hit as part of the wider community. And I just think that, you know, these are opportunities we need to take advantage of in using iwi as part of those discussions, because, I mean, you're talking about humongous reinvestment back into our rohe. If you look at buyouts, flood, transport, you know, it's billions, multiple billions you're talking there. So I just say, kei he te waha Māori, kei he te kanohi Māori mo e nei, you know, kōrero, whakawhitinga whakaaro. And so I'm just going to say that here because I've been saying it everywhere else, you know, that we need to be part of this because this is us. Ko tātou ene. And just having councils, yeah, I think you're missing a big chunk of our community, especially the affected communities. So I don't know if there's opportunity for that to be rectified, but, you know, these are some of the conversations we've been having since day one around, you know, where's our place on the Civil Defence Committee. I know I've been invited on there as an observer, but, you know, we don't have a vote yet, but the legislation's been reviewed. But, you know, when we have an opportunity to do stuff ourselves without legislation, we should be doing the right thing. And that's what I'm saying.
Kia ora.
And just, I suppose, just to add a point to what Baden was saying, because some of the conversations we've had with TPK is around general title, because a lot of our Māori whenua, because if you go back and historically, you had to be general title to meet the bank requirements to borrow money. So it's left a lot of our whānau in a tricky situation because they can't access support through TPK because it's on general title. But that was born through the banking system and loans, so they transferred out of Māori land, transferred into European land, and they were able to build the whare. So that's some of the feedback, we've got back, and then that's what we're having a conversation with TPK, because with their whenua funding that they've got, their 30 million, then if you're not Māori whenua, there's a little bit of a question mark whether you can access that fund through TPK. So I just put that out there because that's a conversation we're having at the moment, and then how, if there's a possibility to address it, because obviously the regional council's got a fund, but then there's a TPK whenua fund as well, and it's just. Yeah, the times you do what you need to build your whare on your whenua, but then for those whares that are impacted now, they can't access it, support through TPK, just as an example.
Back to you, Hinawai.
Yeah, kei te whai. No, I'd like to just to acknowledge Baden's point that many of our pa are sometimes a mix of general title and Māori title, like for instance Waiahiki, and you know we're impacted. We're a 2C, so obviously flood mitigation solutions need to be had. Tūhui with our community, with our hapu, have been had. So it is place specific. Same with Oamahu, many meetings with Oamahu on what are your aspirations for what the future looks like. In Wairoa with Tātou. There hasn't been an exact void to people on the ground, but I do acknowledge through Matariki we have had that opportunity, and actually last Monday we had an update on all this in a combined hui. But there's always room for improvement, I understand that. So you're right, the opportunity to go forward is when we build these solutions together, because we don't have the exact solution. Okay, so these are negotiations around an estimate, but the hard mahi is actually going to come in planning and implementing with those people impacted. So acknowledge, yes, a lot more mahi to be done with those impacted on the ground. So the third kaupapa I wanted to update you on are the 2 reviews that are happening, and they have been announced publicly. One is the Hawke's Bay CDM review, response review. And as Baden mentioned, we saw that the current makeup of our committee is not fit for purpose and it does not allow or has not allowed mana whenua voice, which is why we opened that invitation up to Nikki on behalf of Tai Whenua also, and the PSGs impacted from Cyclone Gabrielle. They have been accepted and joined us at our first hui, which is last month. So there.
It's an important point. It's only because our marae, our Tai Whenuas, when they kicked in from day one of the recovery and soldiered on within their own steam, and then. Yeah, some of them struggled. I know we struggled a little bit at the start to get through, and that was with our own resourcing. So it's good to have that recognised in a way, because it's St Joe's. And I went to St Joe's, and they didn't even know people were designated to go to St Joe's, and they were in a bit of a turmoil. So I suppose having our community, Māori community, connected, then it just provides a better, from operational plan around that engagement, because there was a lot of challenges for our marae and that at the start, as you know, I know you know. Yeah. So good that's been addressed, if that's been addressed.
So that joint committee and that review is led by the mayors, myself, and now our tangata whenua reps, although not voting because the legislation restricts that, not because we don't want it, but what we've seen is let's get ahead of the game, and when that legislation does change to include voting rights, we're in a better space to enact that straight away. So that's one review. The second is our Hawke's Bay Regional Council flood scheme review. There's 2 aspects to that, and this is a big one. We have announced our 3 panellists, led by the chair, Phil Mitchell, who's a partner of Mitchell and Daish, has an engineering background, RMA planning background. We also have Bernadette Arapere, who comes to us from Kōkiri Legal. So she's very experienced in these types of reviews and having a mātauranga Māori lens, which was crucial in the dynamic of this panel. And the third is Kyle Christensen, who was a part of the Edgecombe flood review and is also an engineer hydrologist. So that's the makeup of our flood scheme review. There are 2 essential parts to that. It's understanding how our schemes performed, how our flood protection schemes performed given the rainfall that we had. The second is looking to the future and how do we build back better with more resilience. That brings in the korero of our aspirations, our mokopuna decisions around not just stop banks. It looks at the tools that we can leverage, which includes making rivers wider where we can, natural recharge, aquifer recharge. So that second part of that review is crucial to how we build forward with resilience as a region and how we manage water into the future. So yeah, I think that's enough from me, but you can see there's a lot on our plate, and Nick has stepped into this role 6 months after the cyclone, in doing a tremendous job to help us on this path. So happy to take any questions, or if you want to add anything, Nick.
Like to add anything?
It's just something to add. So the independent review panel, they're actually looking to engage this month now with mana whenua, and that's just to have an initial conversation about how they would wish to be engaged moving forward within the time frame that the panel is operating.
So I don't know, so we if we've got to put expressions, I'd put one forward for Te Whanganui Orotu, and then would work through our CEO and that, and who would represent the board in relation to those conversations. So I'll commit to that. Then yeah, and we had a huge response, so that'd be good for us to have feedback in towards that committee. Yep. Okay. Thank you.
Just in terms of the last review around the flood mitigation. So the official summit, we had all our tai whenua present on the impact of Gabrielle on the Māori communities. Then we had the science come into it. Our Tai team, along with Māori and I forget the other groups, might have been Fish and Bird, put some recommendations around how we go forward. Hey, so I think there's some mātauranga there that we need to be wrapping around, you know, and a lot of it's from us ourselves, but there's also science that supports what we think actually. So, you know, would expect that the regional councils pulling together that kind of information that has been shared freely from our people.
Well, there'll be an opportunity. So we're working through the 3 relationship managers, Anthony, Jack, and through Nathan, just to make those connections initially. And then our ones will probably sort of step back out and leave you to it because it's an independent review. And that's a great opportunity to feed directly in.
Okay. I can't help but think it seems simple to me that this is such an important take. If this Māori committee was called specifically to deal with important, it may be 1 or 2 or 3 important issues that you technically want answers for, you'll get ground root answers from this old scientist here. And you can complete a lot of those things in one day, and that's our input. But the benefit is that it goes out to all the maraes. It comes from all of the maraes, and it goes out to all of the maraes. And we don't deal with anything else, just deal with the take. And I'm sure we're available to be called. For me, we underutilise this committee, this standing committee, underutilised.
Kia ora tātou, and I'll pick up on that idea in a sec. And just thought I'd give you a little bit of background on me without going on for too long. As I said, grew up in a little place called Guernsey, which is a wee island between England and France, and landed in Aotearoa about 21 years ago now, and spent 10 years in Whanganui, and I guess got my introduction to awa there on the Whanganui River, working with the now sadly passed Rangipo Metakingi and Charles Māori Kura, and with Che Wilson, who's pleasingly still with us. And I was working for Te Papa Whai at that point, and started off as an ecologist, so used to go chasing whio and kiwi and things in the bush and doing some predator control and science there. And then moved to Papaoea, Palmerston North, probably 12 years ago or so, and took up a mahi there with the regional council and ran the regulatory side of our business there. So regulatory policy, strategy, but economic development, and a lot of our mahi there involved with treaty settlements. So I hope come with a real feeling from me that partnerships are critical to what we do, and unless we have those partnerships, we don't get the full suite of the knowledge and ideas and skills that people can bring to the table. And so I welcome the chance to build on those partnerships together. I'm no doubt there'll be some history to some of that influences the way we all work today. But one of the nice things about being new is I can kind of ask the dumb questions, and over time, and councils are a big ship and they turn really slowly, but there's a lot of work being done and a whole lot of partnerships being instilled through Pierre's work and Henawai's work, and I'm just there to really to build on that. So I look forward to the day when we've kind of got out of this immediate recovery stress and we can start looking forward a little bit more. And I would be really interested in if there was 30 minutes of kind of non-formal committee time where we could have a conversation about the taki that are really important to you over the next 12 to 24 months. And then we can help supply the information into your agendas that really address those critical taki for you. And I think that might be a little bit of strategic planning we could do together to help that process. So if that's useful and it's just a conversation, maybe we could do that on the back of our next back of our next hui.
That'd be great. I can hear the confirmations.
So just a part-time to the committee then?
Yes.
Are we willing to utilise that first hour that we have prior to us meeting and give half an hour of that up to Nick?
Absolutely.
Yep, go talk all that.
Yeah.
The other thing I think, and look, absolutely the pain that you've gone through with marae being flooded and whānau being flooded and being in category 3 and so on. I'll never know the extent of that, but I hear the message of how difficult and painful that is for you. We are going to see a big investment of Crown pūtea into the region, as well as council pūtea. And I think, I don't want to call anything coming out of the cyclone an opportunity because it's the wrong word, but there's some thinking we can do collectively about how do we deal with things like contracting services to deliver on $500 million worth of infrastructure, what can we do about the way that we contract and employ people and upskill people to try and benefit local people as much as we can through some of that investment? Because those people have had their lives disrupted and smashed apart. If helping people with skills and employment helps getting them back on their life on a better track, then we should be looking at different models for that sort of thing. So I'm really interested in ongoing conversations about that. Realising we've got to get through this painful place first.
Procurement process, because when James was here, he said that was implemented in regards to council process working with Māori, and that was going to be part. Well, I was under the impression that was incorporated into procurement around engagement with Māori. So is that correct? I remember we discussed it, and then James said, "Yep, no, you have a commitment that contracting prior to the cyclone would be incorporated into our procurement process when we contract that work out."
It was kind of kotahi plan enabling.
Sorry, not to cut you short, but when you were talking about it, and James had mentioned it in several meetings, and I just thought it had been implemented in regards to regional council policy.
Procurement process.
So I think we all were in the meetings.
I recall him talking about that.
I remember last term we went through a review and we gave greater weighting to it. But I think what Nick's saying is there's like above and beyond that opportunity of the procurement process.
I'm thinking of our collective partnership also with the territorial authority. So if we looked at Hastings District, ourselves, there's a huge mahi coming. And so what is the opportunity and the scale of that to collectively put our heads together about how do we benefit the region the best out of that mahi? So that's, look, I haven't thought about it any more than that, but I'll be really keen that we think about those kind of conversations, because it is a big, it's a big job ahead of us, but if it's a big job that benefits people who live here, all the better.
We've been thinking about this quite a lot in terms of, well, not just the recovery, but Three Waters infrastructure, the amount of investment coming into regions, and the opportunity for Māori to be part of that rebuild, workforce, business, economic development. So the word of the day is progressive procurement, but we're all about Māori getting into this action. So yep, we definitely support that korero.
So that was maybe me for now, at the risk of taking up too much time in your hui.
Awesome, just bang on time. So this committee is going to receive and note the CE and the Chair's report. Thank you, Mare. Second. Thank you, Baden. All of those in favour say aye.
Aye.
All the ayes have it, carried. We've got 2 more items here. It's really, really vital that we get these done on time, and we've got a spatial climate vulnerability assessment tool that's been allocated 20 minutes. Well, I'm hoping that, hopefully, Papa, that you could spare us 10, kind of shorten it a wee bit so that we can get some of my items, but so grateful to see you here this afternoon.
Just plug in the.
Oh, just to help yourself.
Need a bit of technical help, sorry.
Need some technical help, Papa?
Yeah, sorry. Or I have it on a USB, sorry. Which one is it?
Just a bit of background. Papa is our climate change action ambassador.
Oh, that one. Oh, yeah. Straight in, right? Yeah, thank you.
Give them your apologies.
Yeah, okay, I don't have mic for that. Thank you. Okay.
So save your questions for afterwards, please. Thank you.
Oh, I keep the burning one.
Ahi Māori e koutou, ngā mihi nui kia koutou. Thanks for giving me some short time on this. This originally was a paper that was come to you a few months ago, but it was deferred because of Pat McGill's tangi. So, so you may have seen the paper before, you won't have seen the actual tool, which is what I'm really here to show you is what the tool looks like. This was some work that we started last year, so obviously pre-cyclone, which is why why we're really insisting on sharing this with you now, because it takes on a different importance after we've seen what Cyclone Gabriel was able to do to Arohe. There is some national guidance for local governments to take out these climate change risk assessments for their region. We looked around for different consultants who could do that in our region and settled on Urban Intelligence, who are a group based out of Christchurch, because they have this spatial-based tool that presents these very easy to interpret maps where information's overlaid. So we get risk, we get vulnerability, and then we get what they call assets, or the things that we value in our environment, in our community, and we get to see all that together. We've completed stage 1 so far, which is all publicly available data that we know about our risks coming from the sky, coming from the ocean, coming from anything related to climate change. It is not yet logic checked, so this tool that you're going to see is not yet a publicly available tool because we haven't had the staff resourcing to logic check it, check our data sources and those sorts of things, but our consultants have presented this to us. So I think if I just click into it, I'll bring it up for you and then...
Are you able to speak up a little bit more, please, Papa?
Sure, and sorry, it'll just need to load up. Sorry, again.
What haven't I, it takes in information from things that you may know, like the hazards portal, where you can bring up something on fluvial flooding, or you can bring up something on coastal flooding. This brings it all together, and then it brings in national data sets too of Māori land, as you'll see, where marae is situated, where our power lines are situated. So yeah, I'll show it to you, and then questions and comments. It is for the whole of the region, and this is where the hazards are. We have these loaded hazards: coastal erosion, coastal inundation, landslide, liquefaction, tsunami, and river flooding. So I'm going to bring up coastal inundation. It's kind of different, you project it out into the future based on the modelling that we've had done under work such as the coastal. This one comes under the coastal hazard strategy. The map then shows you, obviously it's pretty small there. Yeah, this is a century out, thank you. Yeah, but we are long term looking at. I'll bring up, I'll just bring up two of interest. It's in my Zoom for some reason. I'm not seeing, oh, here. This is really just a very short kind of show and tell to show you the capacity of the tool. So what you're seeing in the dark blue is areas that may be affected under the modelling that's been done, areas affected by coastal inundation under that model for 2120, and in pink it is highlighting Māori land. So it cannot easily identify assets and things that we have in the region that may be affected. I can show you.
So just on that model, sorry, and you said about the pink. So if you highlight the bit in the pink, the blue along the coast, would that give a definition of the the category within what it's rated in? With the cyclone, with 3, 2, 1 and all that.
No, it hasn't taken into no, and also so it's only got publicly available data sets, the rasters, the GIS kind of information that was accessible to us. So no,
thank you.
I can
you lift the map up a bit?
Yeah, sure. I'll just cancel that down to Porongaho.
Look at that, we've got a bit of red down
there.
Sorry? That's me. Is it?
Now, so yeah, the tool as it's intended, well, we're still working out, and this is why we're consulting and asking for your, your thoughts on how you'd like to use this. The tool as it's intended is not to be a document where people would look for their specific house. It wouldn't ever be what we'd call granular enough to be used at that consenting level or that specific address level, but that's sort of to highlight issues that might exist based on the modelling data that we have. That modelling data also has to assume a climate scenario. So you will have seen those kind of climate curves that say if we don't rein in our emissions, it'll be like sea level rise will be like this. If we do rein in, so they all have assumptions under them that the climate modelling has to take into account. I was just going to show you the other image of the modelling that was available of river flooding. I'll just scroll out a bit. Marae, Māori land. The other element of it is what we call an information layer. So this information is nationally available, like social deprivation. We can identify areas of our community with higher social deprivation. Right. So knowing that they have more vulnerability to those risks, the risk might be the same, but the vulnerability is increased because they don't have the capacity, the same resilience, I guess. I can put that on. It does make a very colourful map.
Is that pulled from the census data or?
These are, is it census or I've forgotten the units they call them, but you can see.
Sorry. Yeah.
It's nationally available data that identifies, I think the darker we go is the higher social deprivation. Yeah. So this sort of tool says these might be areas where if you've got a lot of climate change risk being identified in a high social deprivation, that's the area of focus. Is there anything else you'd like me to show on the tool before we...
Any questions from this table for Pippa?
I don't know.
Anything missing there? Councillor says.
Just a question, so Pippa, can we go and play with it ourselves yet, or is it still in-house?
It's still in-house. Can give you, as members of the committee, I can give you the login, which is a regional council login. It's just not to be shared. I mean, we've shared it with Omahu Marae, who actually worked with the consultant after sharing it with. So we've shared it on a willingness basis. It's just always has to be shared with the caveat that the data hasn't been fully checked, and it's
It'd just be quite useful to play around with it to see what's missing, or then you go to look for something and it's not quite there. So it could be good to have a look and then give feedback that way.
Part of the work in establishing this was also a gap analysis. So the consultants did do a data gap analysis. So we do have an indication of where we might be missing information, whether it's based on a district, or an area, or whether it's based on a type, like, for example, fire information, wildfire information. Unfortunately, as a country, we lack spatial-based fire information. So we really just, FENS is working on it. You know, a lot of this data, while we might lack it today, it's coming down the pipeline, but it was not available in a raster GIS set to put into a tool like this. So, yeah, but we have that available.
Sorry, but you did mention Waihi Tapu Sites Archaeological. Is that another layer in here?
Yeah, now, archaeological sites and heritage site, I'll put on, I'll just take off that social deprivation because it gets a bit loud.
Are these registered archaeological sites? They're not silent files or anything like that?
They would come from the national database. So there'll be, you know, in the other tab of it, you can have a look at where the data's coming from. And there's also an indication from our consultants about how confident they are about some of the data. So some of the data might be 20 years old and we know it's moved on, but unfortunately it's just the best that we have at the moment. In terms of those assets, yeah.
Oh, and the only reason why I do bring that up, of course, you know, whilst the impact of and the devastation was occurring, these places were also under risk too as well. And of course, what showed up out at Omahu, and some of the unregistered sites that we've got started to expose in places where vulnerability, where human skeletal remains started to kind of reveal itself, and trying to get, I guess, the information that can help in a spatial way to enable those that are kaitiaki over those particular areas, marae hapu influence areas, best manage their way in that regard. And of course, it has opened up a new paradigm insofar as when mass ko iwi are of course re-interned. And of course, that creates another potential Waihi Tapu site. So all of this comes into managing in the role of tangata whenua, mana whenua, how in this particular regard has a huge impact. We've seen out on the coastline how there's been a recession of up to 20 metres, particularly in the coastal groups, that are now coming from almost like Clifton all the way, Cape Kidnappers, all the way down to Kairako, Waimarama, and the exposure here again of human skeletal remains. So I think that'd be really, really valuable in terms of where that can at least show in this layering where priorities, cultural significant areas need just to be on the map and, you know, in front of somebody.
Because the question there might be, through you, Chair, how we might do that safely, because a lot of that information is sensitive and private.
Absolutely.
And so is there a way, if you want any of that information included, and there's no requirement to, how we do it in a safe way? And that might be something we can have a discussion about.
Thank you for that, Nick, because we are going through this discussion about the sensitivity, cultural significance, IP, all that data sovereignty. So I think this is where, in that discussion that we're having right now, having those sorts of protection elements, particularly as something like this is online, and it's all about how do we do best manage from a protection perspective and manage that accordingly, but yet at the same time, I guess for our own use. And I mean, if there was a way by which this would assist our marae hapu in their role as kaitiaki, and you'd have that sort of, you know, permission access layer in there, and for the benefit of working collaboratively with each other, to just ensure that left hand's talking to the right hand, that none of this information is put out on the public domain, as we know can provide further risk. This would aid, I think, future generations in terms of what we're capturing now, which is, in some ways, you've got to go and dig all of this up if you have got a kaumātua. But new places are starting to expose itself out of these hazards.
Wow, and we're on 1:30, and what a great kind of intro, and thank you very much for your presentation, and because I know there's no more questions, because we're still trying to finish our hui today. But I'd like to say that we're going to, you're going to need, this committee's going to want to feed back to you some more.
How would you like
and
that?
how can we move on forward? Do we add this to next workshop?
Can I ask one question? Climate control is a big taki. People talk about it all the time. So, kahui kamara sit there, and we've been talking about it. How do I talk this talk to them?
We introduce Pippa, we invite Pippa to the community. We invite Pippa to the community.
But, there is that, there is
How do you
another.
simplify this
Yeah, how do you simplify?
for a ground root people conversation?
Yeah, I think there are ways. People understand risk. They've now seen it and they've felt it. Whereas last year, it was a bit different. It was a bit hypothetical, and I showed pictures of flooding overseas or flooding in another region. People understand it now, and they really do feel like our environment's changing. They're witnessing it. You know, your tohu in your environment of we'll plant this when this flowers. People have been noticing those things, and now they're connecting those dots. So, yeah, we can simplify it down to things like that. Like, we can't count on those environmental signs so much anymore.
And I'll be happy to kind of support where Pippa is going on this, I'm sure, and others as well.
Mare, Paul and Roger are now sitting on the joint committee for climate action. We've just established a tag for that group. We met for the first time this morning.
Yes.
And we would like to invite more input and more collaboration with you through those channels.
Right. Thank you, Mare. Thank you very much, Pippa. Mare, you're going to move and receive this report for
I will.
Pippa. Second by Paula. All those in favour, say aye.
Aye.
All the ayes have it. Kia ora, Pippa. Thank you very much. And we've just gone to
Just apologies.
Farewell,
We've
couple of
taken on
people.
your point that you mentioned, Baden, this morning, because we're meeting with Hirawini and the
Hirawini,
Prime Minister's
Te
team.
Kora.
So we're taking, and any of the whānau that want to come to Mōtio to meet and have their kōrero, because
Te
hey, it's about
kaha
manaakitanga. So I'm just saying, if you want to come out to the marae, you're more than welcome to come and have that conversation. Ngā mihi.
Tēnā kōrua. Thank you. Go well. Good luck. Go well. We're just going to trying to wrap up with our minor items, and this might be the lead up to our wānanga next month. So we've got, I'm just going to turn you to the minor items. I think we've covered coastal hazards of Paura. We're going to move to stop banks. Api.
Okay, kia ora, nō tātou. Straight to the point. I have a breach on our river.
Breach.
Okay. So this runs along 165 Farndon Road. That's the property. Okay, I've been in touch with one of the junior workers here, or managers here, Matthew Arsen, I think is his surname. Anyway, young Matthew. Okay, so going back to 2007, or 2006, 17 years ago. Okay, so the stop bank's up here, and then you have that section of bank that goes out towards the river. So in that 17 years, at least 5 metres has been eroded. Okay, 5 metres of land. And now, since the last flooding we've had, Gabriel, it's now up to the stop bank, which rises about 2.5 metres. So it's up there now, and that's where the serious breach is. Okay, so just on top of that area is a sort of a track. And so what could happen with more rain and flooding, a vehicle, a tractor, one of the regional council vehicles could be driving along there, and it might break away and someone's going to land up in the river. So I'll just bring that to your attention. I just had a quick talk with Chris before lunch, before he left, and he said, look, okay, do bring it up. He will talk to young Matthew, and then hopefully I'll get some notification from the council that, hey, listen, and he just reminded me that your backlog is about 4 years. There's so much happening, and so I might get a visit hopefully within the next 12 months, hopefully. So I thought I'd just bring it to your attention at this hui and let you ponder.
Thank you for tabling
Just a
that.
question, Uppy. So
Yes.
is this the same piece of the bank where you were potentially going to be prosecuted earlier on in regards to you trying
Yes,
to do something about
I
it?
tried to be proactive a few years ago, and
You're proactive.
I was encouraging our people who do concrete to come and drop your concrete into our side of the river. Then I was approached by our people from what's his name, Mike, from the regional council, and he wanted to prosecute me. So I had to take it to the environment court, and I got off lightly. I was fortunate to get off lightly. But anyway, I thought I had a valid idea. But anyway, I have had members of the regional council come out and have a look.
Yes.
And, you know, everyone's promising something. So this is going back a few years ago. And so I'm bringing it.
So it hasn't been remedied, basically. It hasn't been remedied.
It has not. And so I'm bringing it back to the council today.
Thank you. It's been noted. Been noted. Thank you. We're going to raise this with Chris Dolly. Okay, we'll put it in our minors. Okay, so we're going to move on to the next item. We have science charges. Di Smith. Take it away, Di.
Ooh. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. Not that I'm trying to cross over and stay in my lane, but I just do have a query. So we're regarding the Water Holdings Hawke's Bay and the deferral of science charges. Now, I know this is a painfully sensitive subject. However, because we live in Tamatea, it is with us every day. So I guess I just want to get some clarification, some direction, and my question would be, where in this decision-making process does our tai whenua voice our opinion on this matter that's on the table? Because we are continuing to be lobbied by our people on this subject. And as a member of this Māori committee, I don't just want to be a spectator of this as this raru continues on in the periphery around us. So, yeah, it is an issue in our community, and I guess I just want to get some direction about how we can manage the lobbying that's going on with people and the lobbying that goes on behind the scenes with our whānau as well. And I know that this is going to be a matter on the council table very shortly, apparently.
Is there anybody that can speak to that?
Through you, Chair.
Thank you.
The council's just in the process of figuring out, actually, should this be a political decision, or actually should it be a decision that gets delegated to me as the CE to make, because that's where fees and charges should generally lie, rather than being political. And I think the more political, the more people get lobbied. We just literally had a conversation this morning, so we're just in the final stages of tidying that up. So maybe it's one where I could give you a ring offline because I don't have an answer right now because I've got to get my head around it.
Any other comments?
Oh, you poor person getting thrown the rugby pass. It's not that I'm trying to jump out of my lane, but when you live in that community and you are getting hassled about it, we need to have some sort of answer for the people that live down in Tamatea. So thank you. I appreciate a phone call. Thanks.
Got it. It might be the beginning of next week if that's okay.
That's fine. Yeah, that's fine. Thank you.
Next one.
Kia ora, thank you very much, Di and CE. And our last one for the day is future workshops, and Peter's taken a walk, so we're going to have to lead this mic. So future workshops.
So there've been a number of take that have been raised throughout our hui, and not just this hui, even the prior hui. So first and foremost, it's setting a date. I think it's important that we have both yourself, Haniwai, and yourself there, Nick, as part of our workshop, because at the end of the day, you're the two leads when it comes to the regional council. So it's be handy for us to have you in the room too, so we can engage you directly. Are members happy with that our two leads are in there with us in our workshop?
Absolutely, yep.
Absolutely.
Yeah, can't pipe.
That's about getting down to a date.
And
Petty, please.
Oh, I wasn't seeking an invitation.
Withdrawn.
Oh, we'll have Jack then.
But I just spoke to Alison to find out when the next Māori committee scheduled meeting date is, and it's not until 1 November.
Yes. It's just far out.
Yeah,
After
just
elections.
too far out.
Yep.
I'm just wondering whether, because our governance team can certainly rally, including our chair and our CE, to find a date somewhere. How far out would you like it?
Well, we want it within a month. What are we into? We're into August?
We're in August.
Mid-September?
Before those elections, please.
Mid-September, please?
September.
And we'll leave you to come back to us.
Yeah, we'll come back to you.
It's not on the 11th, please.
Remember, we've got people who need to travel down from Wairoa, Central Hawke Space, so they'll need time to get to the venue and to get home.
Yeah, and what we'll do is we'll include the follow-up point from earlier on with Chris Dolly in terms of looking at our flood schemes, so that it fits in timely with your ability to submit into the independent panel reviews.
Could we also have Hinawai and Nick's is on the agenda, please?
Anything you
Any
want to bring to
updates?
us,
Yeah.
anything you want to bring to us to workshop out, I think that would be useful as well.
Okay.
Wednesdays for us anyway.
Yeah.
Did you say Wednesday is good for you?
Wednesday's good for us.
Yeah, we'll stick with the Wednesday, because at the end of the day, it's
Wednesday,
Wednesday's our
put that
committee day.
day aside.
During our council day.
There possibly might not be a Wednesday. Is there an alternative?
They'll come.
Tuesday?
Wednesday the 13th or the 20th?
No, Wednesdays. Councils.
Council's all
council.
bogged
Oh,
up.
they all gone, are they? Well, okay, might have to be a Tuesday late next month.
We'll have a look at something.
All right, then. Tuesday it'll be, and we'll come back with a date.
It's not too late if it can be, because
So
we've just got to
19th,
travel far.
26th of next month.
Ka pai. We'll leave that with our ops, they'll come back to us. Ka pai?
Okay. Any closing comments, Vano?
Just one from me. Just really wanted to thank our chair. This is their first time.
Thank you.
Would say she was a bit worried, don't worry about it.
Thank you very much. Kiri.
Well, some of you wouldn't have attended the Fishhook Summit, and one of the presenters for Te Wairoa was actually Katarina.
Aye.
Aye.
Excellent presentation, let alone cheering today.
Thank you, Kiri.
Just through you, Chair, so we've had a bit of time just to chase up in relation to the devices and Stella. And this is probably where we've landed. Now, Alison is going to be key in this in terms of coordinating your response. So, for those of you who wish to use your own devices and to have Stella loaded onto it, then come back and indicate that to Alison. Those of you who wish a device like the early ones, the iPads, then please come back to Alison and make that indication that you would like a device. And all we'll have to do is cover off, we've got a few devices there from when they were all returned, but we'll just have to cover off the gap with our IT group in terms of any new devices that are required. Stella is a free download, but Alison or our IT people will help you to get that onto your machine. In terms of the print facility, and none of us have print, but in terms of papers that are not public excluded, then through Alison, you have an ability for them to open up a print facility for you, meeting by meeting.
Perhaps not so much printing, typing.
Should put some comments in there.
Been putting comments inside Stella.
So in Stella, you have an annotate menu tab at the
Yeah,
top.
I've
that
seen
you
that,
can
yes,
use.
I've seen that. But what I mean, you know, you when you buy a new computer, you've got to buy a program so that you can do all that stuff.
That should already be in there, right?
So perhaps a one-on-one with Alison, just a tutorial up here to get the most out of Stella.
Yes. And docs.
Fuck it up.
You're welcome. Thank you very much, everybody. Really appreciate your time. Your time is so precious to us, and reach out to all your families, all your friends and your families and communities. And I'm just going to ask our Chairman o Ngāti Kahungunu to close us off since you opened us up so beautifully. I know you're going to round us off so beautifully as well. So, tēnā rā koutou katoa.
Kia ora tātou, tēnā koe, Katarina, kua whakahaere nei tēnei hui, tēnei rā, e te hea mana, tautoko ngā mihi a Mike, rāo ko Piri, kia koe, me ngā mahi hāko tō taima tuatahi tēnei, te ahua nei, kua tino waia koe ki e nei mahi. So, ka nui te mihi kia koe. Hoi no kia tātou I tēnei rā, hene wai tēnā koe. Tēnā koe I o mahi, nui. Hei arahi nei tō tātou nei rohe o Ngāti Kahungunu, here taunga te matawa Māui, Wairoa, te takiwā tamatea, e mihi ana kia koe o tira tō kaunihira, nā kai kaunihiri konei, Sophie, Nick, tēnā koe, te tumuaki hou, mo taku he, kāre au te tukumihi kia koe, te timatutanga tēnei hui. I pōhe au o tērā pe kua hui ke, koe I wainganui a mātou, o a hoena, tuatahitanga tēnei mau, ki tēnei tēpu, nō reira, tikana kia mihi a koe, koa te pōhiri nui, I tō, me tō nui, tō rahi, I pupuri a koe ki runga o Poke Moki Moki. Anei mātou te komiti Māori mihi nei kia koe. No mātou te whiwhi I tō tūranga. Ko koe tērā kua kiki ai te tūranga kai hautu. Nō reira tēnā koe Nick. Charlie, tēnā koe hoa. Kua kanohi mai rā, te takiwā o te Wairoa. Mihi ana kia koe me ngā mea. Kei konei. Tikana te kōrero, ko ngā kaumātua nei nā mātanga o te pūtaiao. Te tangata nei, ki mai, scientist from Pōranga hau. Tika te kōrero. Yeah, no mai rā no, ona mātauranga no reira. Mihi ana kia koutou. Henare tēnā koe tō tainga mai wangani o mātou. Tagata mōhio tēnei, mātanga ki te takiwā o Nūhaka, te māhia, te Wairoa. Nō reira, no te kaunihera te whiwhi, ia koutou, o tira ia tātou, ngā kanohi Māori kua tāmai ki tēnei hui. Nō reira, mihi ana kia tātou, nō reira, e te atua. Ko eke nei mātou ki te mutunga o tēnei huihuinga. Me te tuku aroha kia koe o te pai tēnei huihuinga, nā kōrero, me ngā whakatau. Nō reira, tiakena mai a mātou o tira te kaunihira arohe o te matawa Māui, me te nui o ngā mahi kei mui a tātou, kia pai ake, kia whakarau ora tia tō tātou nei rohe. Nō reira, tiakina mai a mātou, manaaki tia mai a mātou, me te hunga e noho I raro I te kapua pauri, I raro I te kapua ua I tēnei wā whai muri rā I te huripari Gabriel. Hoi no tēnei tamata nei ino kia koe tātua mau e whakamana I rungi tinga tapu. Hoi I karai tomata kai whakaora. Āmene.
Āmene.
Uturo whiti whakamau ai kia tīna.
Tīna.
Haumia hui e.
Tai.
Yeah.